one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is Carol coming? Carol Valakovic should be coming. Yeah. Carol Cott, did you hear from Carol Valakovic whether she was coming or not?
She didn't say she wasn't coming.
Okay.
Okay, I don't think anyone signed up as public input. No. We go to the committee reports. Building and ground.
I have a couple things to mention there. I don't think this is going to sound like a big deal, but I think we can handle this. So we did so well on the roof project in terms of the pricing that when you finish a project, one of the things you do down at State Ed is a process called closing out the grant. And State Ed currently calculates that we did so well that we might need to return $85,000 because, according to them, we didn't spend it on the roof. However, the office is very helpful, and what they attempt to do is they attempt to find ways for you to count other building-related expenses that you've had or will have toward the amount of money that they think that you need to make up. So, for example, a door at the loading dock was inadvertently left out of the planning by the, I don't know if it was the school district or the construction manager, but we can now do that door. We have an escape window project that we've talked about that's around $25,000. We have a couple other doors that might need to be replaced. We can probably count the recarpeting of the Helderberg and Normanskill room, which was around $11,000, against that. So I'm working with this woman down at State Ed to come up with a list of projects either already done or that we'd like to do that can count against that $85K. So that's one thing, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about the fall maze process, and this seemed to me like the right place to basically introduce that. But any questions about closing the roof project?
Yeah, well, that was the Amador money?
Well, there were two grants on the roof. There was $117,500 from Upper Hudson Library Construction Grant funding and $100 from Senator Amador. And the overall project cost $159,000, and we received $217,500 from two different sources to do it.
So the money that they're counting against us, is that from the Amador grant or the Upper Hudson grant?
It's from the Upper Hudson, even though this group instructed me to consider the $117,500 to be the first funds expended, and then to ask Senator Amador if the leftover money could be kept and used for the building. And Tim Burke endorsed that approach as well. And actually, I should check back with Tim Burke and say, Tim, this is the approach the board took, this is the approach that you recommended we take, but now State Ed is taking a different approach. That might make a big chunk of the problem go away.
Well,
So
he
I
had to
will,
give money back too.
I'm sorry?
He had to give money back.
Yeah, yep. So I'll check with Tim, but I also have a process for that I'm working with State Ed to try to, not have to give any money back. So, other questions?
Tim, can I just interrupt that?
Sure.
Since Carol Valakovic is here.
Okay.
With the treasurer's report.
Okay.
Carol. I know it's tax time.
It is, I'm only 3 minutes late. Jeez, you guys are killing me. You're still on time today. Treasurer's report for March is a little bit of an incomplete report from my part, only because there's a couple of things that Carol, Pat, and I had talked about that we need to go through in a little more detail, so I don't really have a lot of information on them as of yet. I will tell you that the basic topics that we're going to be talking about are possible consolidation of some of the cash accounts, whether we need the number of accounts that we have, whether we can merge some of them together, and maybe just clean that up a little bit so there isn't quite the volume of what's going on there. But as of now, we haven't come to any conclusions on that. We talked about our payroll and the fact that we do still seem to be running over budget in that category for the year. Carol has narrowed it down to, it looks like it's coming from December, but again, we don't have a specific reasoning as to why we're over budget, whether maybe budget was just off for this year, whether something additional occurred in December that we didn't budget for. But until we drill down into it a little further, I don't have a specific answer for that. The good news is that we are under budget in enough of our other categories that an overage in payroll to the tune of, I think right now we're at about 29,000, even if it holds for the rest of the budget year, will not put us in a problem from a budgetary standpoint. I mean, you never really want to go over budget in a category, but at least we're under enough other categories to cover it. We also have had some discussions about some of the balance sheet items, but again, I mean, we're not far enough along in the discussions to really bring it to the board at this point. This sum total is we're just doing some cleanup before the audit begins to try and get everything in better shape so that when they come in and do the audit, they don't have a lot of questions, or fewer questions, hopefully anyway, which will help us get through the audit process a little quicker. We are still running under budget for the year, for the 9 months ended and projected out through the year end. Don't really foresee anything too crazy coming up in the next 3 months that would cause us to be off track. We do still have the monies set aside for capital improvements that we are going to carry over to next year for the heat pump project, which are included in this year's budget, 17-18's budget, and that's about it, unless anybody has any report questions.
I have a question, if no board members do. I'm trying to remember, I'm going to say what I remember of a conversation you and I had, and then you can correct me because my memory may not be great. But we were talking about the issue of whether to hire the current audit firm again.
Yes.
And I believe or do you just want to tell me what you...
My recommendation was that with changing fiscal officers this year, it probably was not the best year to go out to bid for a change in audit firm as well. So my recommendation was to go ahead and stay, well, I mean, you're already at the end basically of the 16-17 year. If you're going to go out to bid, I would go out to bid in the fall or very, very, very early winter, like late November, early December at the latest, because you're going to get fewer responses to a request for proposal if you ask firms to do an RFP in January, just because they're busy. So you're going to get firms that otherwise might give you a response who just don't have time to write up a response to an RFP going into tax season. So you're going to get more, a more variety of responses if you ask. Once the audit's over, maybe, you know, August, September, October, November even. But I wouldn't do it now, and I wouldn't do it in the spring. Because you're kind of pigeonhole yourself in terms of who's going to be able to respond.
After the audit, are we going to look at the property and equipment law and get an explanation for it?
I think there was going to be a project, a separate project done on all of the fixed assets, not necessarily in conjunction with the audit, but just as a general cleanup of looking at the fixed asset accounts and seeing if we can determine what each asset is. Do we really still hold it? If not, let's write it off. I'm sure that the auditors have a fixed asset listing that they've been running depreciation off of that they can provide us that shows exactly what's in each of the categories in the balance sheet. And then that can at least be the starting point for going through and kind of reviewing, you know, what do we really still own and what needs to come off the books.
Okay, so after the audit's done, someone will do that.
Yeah, was that going to be worked on, was Dan working on that?
Dan at one point was asked to do that, but
Okay.
to my knowledge never began the process.
Okay.
Do you happen to know, Margaret?
I don't
if
think
you
he
did
did.
anything or Carol?
I think Dave has been looking at it a little bit and talked about it.
Okay.
I mean, it's not necessarily going to be working on that, you know, outside of the bounds of the normal job duties. It doesn't really matter when you do it.
The two factors I can think of that matter in terms of when we do it are that we're about to change payroll vendors, and that's about a 3-month implementation process. And we also have David working on cleaning up our New York State retirement contributions, and I'd like to get
That's
both of
more
those done before we. It's, you know, I know it bothers you, Barbara. It bothers me too, but it's it's not a current problem for me from a library administration point of view. And I think if we added that to what Carol, as a new fiscal officer, is in charge of, I don't think it's the right thing.
Yeah, no,
to do.
I mean, it's something that's going to be a substantial project, and I would say that, like I said, unless you're doing it outside of the bounds of the normal job duties, it's going to be very labor intensive. I mean, yes, you can count houses, 1, 2, 3, right, and you're done, but if you're really gonna look at fixed assets, you're talking about counting chairs and computers, and especially computers, because there's a million of them and they're all fungible, and how do you tell if this is that HP 2100 or this HP 2100 or whichever it is. But I agree that the payroll change is extraordinarily important, as is the review of the retirement information. That's a today problem, whereas the rest of it's just like, oh, we'd like to get this cleaned up.
Do you think that would be simple for me? It's just land to annex, what does that mean? Land held, future development.
Right, but then
building
somebody
annex.
has to go back and figure it out. That's the issue. I mean, we can see that there's something on there that we don't think we hold anymore, but where did the monies come from? When did it get put into the books? And then it turns into, somebody's gotta go back and look at 19X year when it hit and try and figure out what generated it. And that may, I don't even know what that entails. Do we have paper records back that far? Is there something in storage that somebody's gotta go find a box and pull? And that's where you start digging into the time frame. You know, if somebody had free time, great, but I mean, you've got a brand new fiscal officer who's still, you know, working into the kinks of our everyday stuff versus looking back at something that happened in 1980. I don't
Is,
even know, I'm
while,
totally guessing.
while we're talking about it, is it something that we could reasonably expect the auditors to play a role in?
No,
Okay.
and I say that only because they wanna come in and audit what you have, they're not gonna do a project. Now, could you contract with a firm to come in and do a fixed asset cleanup? Sure. You know, you could hire a firm to bring in, say, a lot of juniors, because you wouldn't wanna, you know, pay large dollars on an engagement, bring in, you know, seniors, 2 seniors, but you wouldn't want to use the firm that's auditing you because then they're auditing their own work. And they probably wouldn't take it as a consulting arrangement. So you're looking outside of your current firm, even just for that. You could do it, but I mean, I think that's, and I apologize for calling him Dan earlier, but I think that's kind of was what we were thinking with using David, was that he's an external source, he's not, you're not pulling him away from his day-to-day to do a project of that nature. He's somebody that you can come in and work on a project and, you know, kind of outside of the framework of the normal operations of the library.
Any other questions for Carol? So you're planning to talk about that overage on Carol next meeting?
Yeah, I mean, the goal, I was thinking in, what month is this, April. So I was thinking when we looked at January's month end that it was a timing issue that would go away, and when it was still there in February, I was like, eh. And when it was still there in March, I was like, no, it's a real overage. So yes, the goal is to kind of try and see, first of all, the issue becomes, is the problem the budget or is the problem the actual? Because the problem could theoretically be the budget, and we could have just under budgeted for this year, in which case that's where our issue lies. If we made a formula error in this year's budget, if we just forgot a position, I mean, who knows? Then secondarily, okay, if the budget's lining up, then what happened in what looks to be at this point to be December? What happened in that month to cause the overage that's now rolling forward? So yes, hopefully we will have an answer for next.
Okay. So do we have a motion then? Barbara? Second by Judy. All in favor? Okay, that was unanimous. Thanks very much,
Should I
Carol.
try to be on time next time?
Please.
Just make it whenever you can go.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Back to the,
You wanted to finish a couple of comments?
Sure.
I think you got a motion for the check register?
We could do that now, yeah.
Why don't you make a motion for the check register as presented?
Can I just ask one quick question about the retro payments? Are those to do with the 3 retro pays? Is
that to do with the Sunday
Yeah.
issue? Okay,
Yep.
sorry, yeah.
Okay, so did you vote on the motion?
No, we have,
No,
wait,
sorry,
wait,
no.
just 1 second.
Mhm.
Did we have a problem with the glass tops? Did they break or something?
No, they were, we repurposed 2 of these exhibit cases to, and in fact, you could all look at it in the area that used to be the book nook on your way out. There's now a display area for all of the devices that we circulate, which we collectively call the Gilderland Gadgets. And the lids for those display cases were really, really heavy and really, really dangerous. So we tried to buy some hydraulics to hold them up because we're going to be opening them a lot, and patrons can actually open them to get the stuff to check out. And we couldn't find a hydraulic unit that would support the weight. So then either Lou or Maria came up with the idea of replacing the glass on the top with plexiglass to lessen the weight. And once the weight was lessened, then we could, the hydraulics that were available will now hold it up. So it's a safety thing, basically, is why we did that. So, and we did 4 cases. We have 8, but we decided that we'd spend half the money and do 4 to see how it worked out. So,
Okay. I have, let's move to approve it. Did someone make a second?
Yeah, I will.
All right, Brian? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous.
all right, so in your packets, there's a document called Planning Timeline from Butler, Rowland, and Mays. This was requested by you guys at the last board meeting after we signed the Butler, Rowland, and Mays contract. And it's a very exciting process. We could certainly talk about it at length, but this is what's going to happen, and some of it has already happened. So I'll try to summarize quite quickly. The first step is an analysis of the building envelope, they call it. So this is the structure and all of its systems, with the exception of the HVAC system, since we're paying ME Engineering to analyze the HVAC system, so we didn't want to pay for that analysis twice. That's starting a week from now on April 26th. And then the staff, all the staff will be interviewed in a day-long process that goes department by department on May 2nd, attempting to get all of their ideas about the future of the library, both in terms of the physical space and in terms of what Paul calls the program, which means basically what we do for people, events, services, etc. Then there's a board foundation retreat scheduled on May 12th. Paul's schedule, by the way, is very full. So, you know, most of these meetings, this was the only time we could get him in. But we built that in because we felt that the board and the foundation both would like to have some input into this process. And there has also been the opinion expressed within the last 6 weeks or so by members of the foundation as well as members of the board that the 2 groups should be working a little more closely with one another. And so we thought that would be a good sort of quasi-social way to get together for a little while, hear an update from Paul on what the staff ideas have been, hear some of your ideas. Then we get past the budget vote. And there's...
Why does it say one-on-one there? That would be us
What are
individually.
you looking at?
I don't know why he wrote one-on-one, because it really would be more of a presentation by Paul and maybe a Q&A. So I don't think there's time in an hour and a half for a one-on-one.
This is a Friday night?
Yes.
It is Friday night, yep. And you know, you, obviously, you don't have to come, but,
We know the better to
Well, some of us attend services on Friday night. but
okay, okay. We can try to move it.
No, it's just, okay, what?
No, it's not, I mean, it is typically not why you hold on Friday nights, you know, right? So I get the point, yeah.
Actually, if you guys ask me to, I'll ask them for
Yeah, you
No,
should.
overtime.
you know what, it's just an ongoing issue,
Okay.
I mean, for a lot of reasons, you
Embrace-
typically don't do a public meeting on Friday night, just for a lot of reasons, so if you
You
can,
know,
you probably.
There are a lot of
Sure.
reasons, and Judy's reason is an important one.
Yeah,
So if
it
you
is.
guys
Well,
want me to go
I-
back, I'm happy to go back.
I don't have to, you know what, if that's, I don't want to dictate what it is, I'm just expressing the point that
Yeah, no,
there's a lot of
it's
different
okay.
people.
Sure.
It's not the only point, it's usually difficult on a Friday night for a lot of reasons. I mean, the religious being one, and then others just to get people together on a Friday night, you know, for just.
I am completely willing to go back.
They can, you try, I think that's all.
You want me to try?
But
Yes.
I
Yes, we
would
can
say,
Okay.
try, yeah.
Move the Friday night, so. All right. Okay, well, that's good because the foundation members don't know about it yet, so hopefully it's successfully moved and, you know, they won't have to encounter the same problems. May 25th, Master Plan Committee meeting, okay? So Paul's process involves creating a committee of 6 people, 5 to 7 people, that kind of check in with him throughout the process. I don't know how many meetings this committee will want to be involved in or he will want to ask for. But we talked, Margaret and I and Paul, and we came up with the structure as follows. The 6 members of the committee we think should be Margaret and myself, a board member, a foundation member, and 2 staff members from different strata of the staff. We could certainly add a 7th member if anyone thought that a 7th member was needed. His comment is the more people you have, the harder it is to schedule a meeting. You know, I will ask your recommendation at some point soon as to which board member should serve on the committee. We can certainly talk about that now or talk about that offline, whichever you prefer to do. And then June 2nd is a very important day. He does 25-minute interviews from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. with local groups. And you'll see that this was a brainstormed list of the kinds of groups that might be invited in. And the way that we ask these people to come and give their input about the future direction of the library is personal phone calls from myself saying, you know, hello, so-and-so, we'd like to invite you to this meeting, explaining what it's all about. And basically it's the same thing as the staff interviews, but it's for groups outside of the library. And it also serves the function of telling all those people that you invite in through that one day about the 2 public charrettes, which are June 3rd and June 7th, so that you can hopefully get some of those people seated to come back. Staff Development Day is June 14th. We're going to start the day with a breakfast, you know, bagels, coffee, etc., where Paul will update the staff on how the process is going. And then the public, we heard you, meetings. He wants to present at the July board meeting the reports that he's written on the program and on the existing conditions of the building. And, you know, basically, I've probably taken enough of your time, but I think I would encourage you to read through the entire 2-page document and to contact me with any questions. I think the question about a Friday night meeting is an excellent example of the kind of thing that you might notice as you read in detail through that. And we can try to change anything that is problematic for you guys as a board.
Tim, just the immediate, I don't see any kind of like work with like the middle school, high school kids.
In the
Is that in there?
brainstormed list there?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
they're
mean,
on our,
okay.
Margaret and I have our own list as well.
I mean, it would be interesting for him to, maybe that's not in his repertoire, but it just seems that's a kind of the future leaders kind of future. That's really, you know, once they're in, we'd want them to continue. You know,
Sure. Yep, I agree. And their teachers and school librarians as well are on
Yeah,
the brainstorm list, so.
But actually to hear from the kids, I mean, maybe not the preschool or the elementary, but it's certainly the ones that, you know, use it and what their experience has been and, you know, how they liked it or not.
Another group you don't see listed on there, but that we've already talked about are what Beth Rienti, our head of youth services, has called Story Hour Moms.
Yeah, yeah.
Or
I
dads
saw
or grandpas,
something. Yeah.
people who come and use the Story
I
Hours.
saw the young parents, yeah, but I didn't, I think the kids, you know, they have particular viewpoints on the library, and, you know, it's.
And any other groups that you think of, shoot me an email, and we'll put them on the list. You know, the idea is you invite a whole bunch of people, and maybe a lot of them turn you down, so.
I know.
Honestly.
I know that oftentimes people from various group homes from here, and
Yeah.
I don't see,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have that down.
They're on
Yes,
our
ROI
list.
living
Okay,
resources,
okay.
yeah.
So
Okay.
Paul left the meeting and created this document, and then
Okay.
we had our own separate
Yeah.
notes as well, so.
Would it be okay then if you emailed us within the next couple of weeks about that master plan committee?
Mhm.
We'll have it on the agenda on May 11th,
Okay. Mhm.
solidified then,
Okay,
all
yep.
right?
Mhm.
That'll remind us your email, and people can think about who wants the stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good. That's it for me.
Okay. I don't think we need a motion on that.
No.
Finance?
We haven't met, but we feel very proud about the budget. We-
Okay. Personnel labor? Nothing to report there.
I have a quick comment. We had the Sunday pay grievances, and we have signed an MOA with Unit 1 resolving that grievance. We have an MOA with Unit 2 that has been agreed on by all parties and is in the room here awaiting my signature and yours. So I've got it on my list before we leave the room to sign that. So, and
Is there a highlight to that? I mean, is there?
basically, Chris, would you be interested in summarizing that, or you want me to take
We've
it?
done it
Right?
for several meetings, I don't know,
Mhm. Okay.
I don't think we need to.
Oh, okay, I don't recall it, so that's.
They were correct,
Yeah.
we agreed, and we paid back,
Right.
very much.
Yep.
So it's an MOU to correct it going forward?
Yeah, and in fact has been corrected going forward,
We don't
but,
have to pay back, they don't have to pay back. We got
It
a
actually,
Well,
corrects
it's
to go
going
backwards to December when it starts, so
That's
that's
what
why.
he said,
we
that's
did
about to be
so much
signed,
work.
that's about to be signed tonight, the MOU.
Right, no, I understand, but it's usually MOUs to go forward, right? So it's to amend the contract to go forward.
it is, but there was a retrospective pay component to it as well, which has been taken care of. The error began on December 16th, and the MOAs were agreed to about a month ago, and we did the retro pays after that.
Okay. Policy. Judy?
Are we dealing with, both issues, both the, summer committee work now and the trustee absence issue now? Is that, cause I just see on the agenda, how do you want, whatever you wanna do.
Well, what I foresaw doing is during this period, you deal with your proposed bylaw. It turns out that under new business, we have trustee absences. That's gonna be moved for reasons that will become apparent through executive session.
Okay, so then this is just about the bylaw revision, and that's it. Okay,
Right.
fine. So everyone should have gotten by US mail and by email a copy of, and if you don't, we have to make copies, a copy of, what the, does everyone, okay. If you don't have this, I'm gonna pass this around. And also, you all have an up-to-date copy of the bylaws.
Thank you.
These are the bylaws that are on the website. They are up, as I said, they're up to date. The last amendment was in December 2015, so everyone is operating now with the same information. The committee and, Jason and Carol, if you wanna chime in at any point, if I forget something, let me know. We met last week, also Chris and Dan were there, so if you wanna chime in, that's fine, of course. And we had two issues to look at. One of them had to do with, the issue that committees were kind of, under our current bylaws, committees' work was kind of suspended from July until they were reappointed in September. And we were trying to figure out some way to make it so that the committees could still work formally if it was necessary. Typically, it's not necessary in the summer, but sometimes things come up where we need a vote or a recommendation or something. So, we, agreed to recommend to the full board a revision regarding standing committees. And I don't know, I mean, I can read it out loud, you all should have it in front of you. I don't know how much I need to talk about it. Basically, it's just that instead of waiting until September for the president to appoint a chair. The president's gonna appoint a chair and other members of the standing committee no later than September. So if necessary, he or she could appoint a committee and its chair in July, in August if there's a special meeting, really at any time.
Any input, questions? Makes sense.
Do we make a motion to accept the revisions, or?
For that particular, you would have to make a motion, correct? Unless there's any other questions, comments?
Yeah, this motion. be
Oh,
made.
this is just a
Yeah.
reading. This,
Yeah.
we're
Oh,
only
that's
just
right,
reading
we
this
just
now,
got
not
it,
right.
I'm
Thank you
sorry.
for that. Thank you for that reminder.
just
Yes,
moving
we're
it
just, so
forward,
now you've
sure.
all read it,
Yeah, I read it,
okay?
okay.
You actually got it. It was
Yeah,
postmarked
yeah,
on
got
the
it.
10th, so you
Very
got it.
pretty.
You notice
Very
that?
nice.
No, 30 days ahead of time, okay? All right. The next one, I don't know that, quite honestly, that we're really even at the reading point of this yet, because what you have before you is what we left with on Monday night after the policy committees met. In the meantime, I've had a couple conversations with our attorney, Chris Shanton, and I'll explain what she proposes, and then there have been some issues that have been raised by members of this board. Let me just start with what Chris has mentioned. The very last sentence of the proposed bylaw talks about, or states that a trustee who's been removed shall be ineligible for appointment or election to the board for a period of 1 year from the day of removal. She actually recommends that that not be included because it's in the law. Whether we include it or not, it doesn't matter. If a person has been removed, they are not eligible to run for office for a year, period, that's it. That's not the same thing as if a person resigns. If a person resigns voluntarily, there's nothing that precludes them from eligibility to run at any point in time. So she just says, there's no reason to put it in there because it's in the law. So that's Chris's position. A couple of other things that were mentioned about this that people might want to consider is one of the goals was to move away from the subjective standard of excused versus unexcused absence, and instead just have there be a numerical standard about whether or not someone has been attending board meetings. And we included now also not just board meetings, but committee meetings, because they're so critical to getting our work done too. So that's why there's no language in here that says excused or unexcused absence. Actually, I'll give you, Barbara, I'll credit you with this. Barbara thought that perhaps it would be a good idea to explain in the bylaw that the reason we're accepting the president from missing 4 or more meetings of committees is that the president is an ex officio member of every committee. So you just thought it might be clearer if we use the term ex officio in there. So we can decide on the language if you want to explain it any further about why the president is accepted from that standard of committee
This
meetings.
would put us in a position as opposed to all the other member libraries in eliminating excused absences. I brought this up at the
Yeah. Some,
Upper Hudson
well-
and the other libraries,
the other
boards have
libraries,
that, have excused
the other
absences.
libraries, many of them do. I didn't survey all the UHLS ones, but it's true the ones I did survey do, but many libraries in the state, school district libraries in the state do not have that language, they have other language.
And the board can always excuse it if they want to excuse it,
Exactly.
because they can.
And
vote
this
on
is
it.
discretionary. If you notice that just to make it really clear, that we say the board may remove the absentee trustee, because there might be circumstances under which, for whatever reason, the board by the majority of the board decides that they do not want the trustee to be removed, for whatever reason. But this is discretionary. What's not discretionary, though, is when it would take place. Because we felt it was important that if there was gonna be some action about removal, that it should take place immediately and not months later. And of course, it goes without saying that this would not become, there's no retroactive power to this, that if we decided to go with this at some point, that's when it would take effect. There's no look back on this.
question I have on that part of it
Mhm,
is, what if for some reason
mhm,
the trustee that we're removing cannot appear at that board meeting,
mhm.
unless that be put off?
Why would
Yeah, they
the
probably
trustee
wouldn't.
have to approve it?
Yeah.
Why would the trustee have to approve it?
Well, because what Chris said about having the opportunity to be heard.
There's more to that, actually. That's why we can't really pursue this completely today. Chris Lanchanton brought up the point that there may be a process, it's called minimal due process, that one has to go through in order to remove a trustee. However, she's gonna research this, because I think that applies only to misconduct or abuse of power, not to absence, not to remove by absence.
No.
She's gonna, do you know that?
It does, yeah, as
That
a effect.
It
It's
applies
only-
to
yeah,
misconduct
yeah,
and abuse,
right.
something like that, neglect.
Yeah,
but
your
not-
bylaws can always speak to
Right.
your certain terms, you know what I mean, but not.
She was gonna,
trustee,
that's
but
what I
she'll-
thought also, but she's
If
gonna
that's the case,
confirm
then
not.
I have no problem.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that, I didn't catch you up to speed on that, because she was still researching it.
And
That makes sense.
the way this reads then, the trustee who is the subject of this possible motion votes on the motion. Because the trustee hasn't been removed until
Well,
the
except
vote.
that, isn't that, I mean, doesn't that go into whether or not there's a conflict? Doesn't a person who's the subject of a removal action, isn't that an inherent conflict?
I would think so.
I don't know
Okay.
if that disqualifies the person.
Well, we can certainly find that out too. We can find that out too. and-
I'm not even objecting to that.
Yeah, no, you're
I'm
just making
saying
sure, yeah,
that seems to be what would happen.
okay.
May
I
I?
thought that was just like. an
Typically,
inherent
somebody would have
conflict.
to recuse
That
themselves
was-
if
I
it's a
thought
vote
so,
by
but
yourself.
If that needs to be spelled out,
We can spell
we
it
can
out,
spell it out,
which isn't a bad idea.
okay. We can spell it out. Barb, I think I missed something of
You're
yours,
board
so,
member, but so-
there's more you, okay, so,
Just on the, Chris is saying we don't have to put that in. And in my discussion with you, I was sort of lobbying that we do leave it in and cite the state ed law, only from the point of clarification, so that, it just makes it clear, why this sentence is in here. And she's saying that we don't even have to put the sentence in here, but I think for clarification, it doesn't hurt to have it in there and cite the state ed.
I mean, I don't think there's harm in keeping, I don't think there's harm, I don't think we should cite the law, because we haven't done that in any other part of bylaws. I don't think
Except,
that's,
if you don't, then there's no point. This way, it looks like we're making that determination.
but
Or is
so
this
many of
the
the bylaws are written, they mirror the law. I mean,
Right.
so many of the bylaw, if you look at any bylaw, you can say, oh, well, that exact language is in the law, that exact language is
Like
in
the
the
reason
law.
why we don't have a trustee, the treasurer be a trustee, we don't put pursuant to.
Right, we don't, none, I don't think any of our bylaws, and typically bylaws don't state the exact provision of the law that it comes from.
But she's right, I think it's
But
not
we
an
can,
idea
it's
that.
keeping
you
this
can't include
statement,
it. I agree.
yeah,
It
it's
makes
fine
sense.
with me. We
Make
can-
it clear.
I think Chris was saying we don't have to keep it in there.
I don't think we should keep it in there. I think it changes the whole tone of I think it's unnecessary, not because it's not in a law, but because it changes the whole tone of this whole thing is done an excellent job of making it non-subjective and non-personal, okay? And it's taken away all the president having to decide whether or not it's excusable and all that. And it's non-personal. Now, we put in a sentence like this, which basically is unnecessary, because one, I'll tell you why it's unnecessary from my point of view. One, if you're going to appoint somebody, the board gets to vote on that, right?
Exactly.
So are you going to vote for someone that you already just removed? No. And the other reason is that 1 year, it's not up to us who runs for the board. It's up to, a person, he or she can get the voters or the taxpayers to sign their, whatever it is you call that they got to, to position to run, okay? And they vote that person in, okay, then that person is on the board for, until they keep, and if they don't keep their regular attendance, they're off again.
They're already eligible, they're not even eligible to run though.
If they weren't eligible, then we'd have to bring an action.
But
against
then
them
by
to-
law, they're not eligible
Right.
anyway.
Right, exactly.
So, I think that it's not necessary, I think it's, and then I think it just puts a personal tone to it, sort of a, okay. They aren't eligible, so it is punitive anyway, and, but
But
it's,
we're not, it's the law that's the,
it's the law that's
Okay,
being
we're not, right.
punitive. So it's sort of saying, okay, you're not eligible, but I just think it's unnecessary, and why do it?
I disagree with Barbara because I think this puts them on notice. I don't think everybody knows the law. This puts the person on notice. So they
That
don't-
what? They already know they're off.
So they don't go to run again the next year, the next election.
They'll find out they can't.
well, the,
No, they won't
the
find
one,
out. That's what I'm saying.
the one,
They won't find that
Yeah.
out unless they research the law themselves or have a lawyer.
the one,
Otherwise, that we have to affirmatively take
No.
action to knock them off the ballot, which I don't think we should.
it might
have to
serve
put
as an
someone through that.
inducement for someone to resign rather than wait to be removed also.
Correct.
Because if someone resigns, there's no penalty. They can run again at the next election. I mean, nothing is stopping them. Then it's up to the voters.
Well, then it
But
should be the law, okay, you can, the appointment part is,
But the
okay.
appointment, I mean, certainly, the appointment, you know, the appointment is, you're right, that's up to us. If you feel like we should take out the appointment,
Okay, but if you put in, again, as a law, okay, but that should definitely say that, what law is it? Is it a librarian law,
It's an education
educational
law.
law? Education, okay, under the education law, such person is not eligible to run.
I had the same reaction that you had, that this was sort of, harsh punitive thing. But when it's a state law, that's why I wanted to clarify it, that, the reason why we're saying this, to clarify it for everybody, is that it's out of our
you
control.
know, it's kind of
Okay,
interesting.
this comes as it's out of our control.
Well, it's kind of interesting to me that anyone's reacting to this as being punitive. The only reason we would even go through a removal process, well, first of all, it would be a very difficult process for all of us. And secondly, it's because of whoever is the absentee trustee, it's their actions. It's not our actions that would cause us to get to this point. It's the absent trustees' actions or non-actions. So I have to respectfully disagree with the sense that this is punitive.
But the person who, the trustee who is absent may not feel the same way. They may feel that, oh gee, I really, really couldn't get there. And, they may, so
Well,
I guess it's
We're
a
remembering,
matter, that's one.
we're talking about someone who had to have missed 3 consecutive board meetings, or four
Or four
altogether,
And
or,
I agree,
okay,
that's
that's
too
an
much.
awful lot of time to be absent.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with that at
And
all.
so, what I'm saying is that, part of our duty is to be aware of what our responsibilities, our obligations, and the law is, as it applies to us. So,
No, I agree with
I
that.
just don't, I'm fine whether the statement stays in or out, because it's the law. Whether we put it in or not, that's the way we operate.
But can we clarify that it
And
is
not,
the
well, I'm
law?
opposed to that because we don't do it anywhere else in the bylaws. And I don't think there's need for it.
And then
What,
with
to
meetings,
clarify it? That it's
with
the law?
meetings, do you count regularly scheduled meetings at the beginning of the year? Or do you also count meetings that have been changed for the convenience of the director or a board member?
I don't know that we've ever changed meetings except we've held special
We
meetings.
were 2
Right, but
meetings
that's-
in
that's
a
for
year.
Sure that we change.
Yeah,
Right.
that,
Yeah, I
the,
think we
Yeah.
changed
Do you
more, yeah,
count those
you know?
meetings that were changed, if
I
someone
think we
can't
do,
come to
sure.
those meetings?
Of course,
Sure, sure.
they were voted on by the board.
Yeah, because there are, if
That's
they
right, the
are,
board votes on them.
yeah, if they are
Yeah.
set in a day that someone can't come, what do you do? with
Again,
that?
we're
It's 3 in a
talking, the
row.
threshold is missing 3 meetings in a row. It's not
Or
an
4.
occasional absence, which everyone has to do because of their lives, obligations, whatever.
Or
But-
4 total.
Or 4 total. And again, it's discretionary, there's May. I just want to get back to the, I am opposed to putting in pursuant to law or anything else unless we go through all the bylaws and put that same phrase in wherever it is that the law is obligating us to do something, which is basically every single bylaw.
Then I leave it
That's
out.
a lot of meetings to miss. I mean, we don't meet in the summer.
I don't think,
What about
I don't
committee
think the
meetings?
issue is
Yeah,
the number of
let's
meetings.
leave it out.
per
Sounds
mission.
like
I
committee
say,
meetings are
leave it
included.
out.
Leave it out totally, so you're saying take
How
the sentence
curly is
out.
I say take the sentence out. I'm not opposed to the number of meetings
Oh.
people are
You're
missing
just,
or the.
you don't want
You
the
just don't like the
sentence in
language?
there.
I just don't want that sentence.
You don't want
in
the
there.
sentence in there,
That's
or
all.
if it's in there, you don't want, you wanted to say pursuant to law.
Right.
Okay.
And then for committee meetings, then the committee meetings have to be scheduled at a time, and day that everyone on the committee has indicated that they are able to come. Or else that absence would be counted against, someone who can't come to a meeting on a certain date or a certain time. So rather than set the meetings at times that are convenient for most people, they need to be set for times that are convenient for everybody on the committee.
I think as a general rule, committee meetings are chosen whenever they make them.
That's the way,
Well,
that's the
try
way we
to do
operate.
that,
Yeah.
That's the way we operate.
Yeah,
And,
but that should be made,
It
if
should
they're
be-
not, then the board's not gonna vote along.
Right,
They
I mean,
couldn't come
it's,
because
right,
they, they pick the day when they
when,
picked it
If-
at 3 o'clock when they're at work. I mean, obviously, like I say, well, you pick the day when they're at work.
and there are people who have other obligations,
Sure.
certain days and certain times, and, should that be counted against somebody?
That's also
We,
something
I
we
mean, there
discussed
are
before we
provisions
vote
to
on
always
something.
call in too, I mean, that's, you have to always look at that.
I mean,
those
That's
options.
all stuff we
Most-
can discuss before you vote something on.
right.
You bring up a good point. Are we talking 4 absences, so you could have 3 absences from a board meeting and then 1 from a committee, or?
No.
No, there's
No.
no, you gotta do it.
Or vice
That's why there's
versa,
3 different things.
or one meeting from the board meeting and 3 absences.
No,
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 it's
no,
not.
No,
no,
they're separate.
no,
Three
separate.
separate things.
Committees are
Yeah.
separate from
First,
board
yeah,
meetings.
Qualify that.
It is clarified.
How is it not clarified? Everything's or.
4 board meetings.
Consecutive board meetings, or 4 board
with the
meetings,
exception.
or 4.
Okay, committee meetings aren't included or are included?
So in other words.
Committee meetings are included, but not cumulative with board meetings. So,
Okay, that's not, okay, let's see. Oh, in other words, what, you could be absent for 2 board meetings, and you could be absent for
3 committee meetings, and you're
Fine.
golden.
Good to go.
7,
Yeah.
or whatever, but no, yeah, 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, board meetings in any fiscal year of any committees in which he or she is a member. Okay, those 4 board meetings are separate then from the 4 committee meetings?
Correct.
Okay, that I didn't.
Okay.
So I think with the or, it's a long sentence, so it's, you may have to read it more than once. but it's-
Maybe you split it out, you may have to split out the
We're
board
trying to
meetings to
figure
the
out-
committees.
Okay.
Maybe that may just be, that may be easier to, that would be straight.
It's pretty clear.
No, I know, but it does get, I have to spit it out in my own for the same discussion,
Well, and that's it,
if I
and
do
so
that
that's
now.
good that we're fleshing it out.
Yeah.
We're fleshing it out here, and of course, any new trustee
Yeah.
it would be explained to them presumably.
Jimmy, I had a comment, it's a
Yes.
lot like the comment we made about going through all the bylaws.
Yes.
You put in here, it would be by majority vote, which really is the default way we vote according to the bylaws.
So if that was a question, I didn't know whether, I assumed majority was how we would want to, okay.
There is
So-
only one exception, and that
Yeah,
is
that's for.
bylaws
Okay,
themselves.
so the board meeting in which absent trustee at a board, just take out by a majority vote. Is that what you would recommend?
By a vote.
Well, only because,
By a
yes,
vote, take
I
out
would take out,
minority.
yeah.
Take out
And
majority.
then is it a majority of the full board or a majority of those present and voting?
It's always a majority of
That's what the bylaws say right now.
The people that are there.
The
Yeah.
people who are there.
So if only
exactly.
6 people are there, then,
You have to have a quorum
including
to
the
vote.
person.
Right, gotta be
Yeah.
quorum.
Yeah, including the
So that's
person
six.
who, you know, is
So that's
going
5
to be
people.
voted, then that would be, for 3 people can vote to kick someone off the board.
Yeah, that's,
Yep.
everyone else is absent.
Yeah. Yep.
No.
It's, and again, you know, I just want to,
That would be a bad day for anybody.
yeah. Yes.
Within our bylaws, should we perhaps consider, this would be over and above this, but what somebody just raised, I know like in the school board, you have to have, no matter what the situation is, whether there are 6 people present or 12 people present, you have to have a majority of the board to pass any resolution. And,
A majority of the board, not a majority of the board present.
right,
No, we don't
I
want
don't
to do that.
think, we would have a really hard time.
So that's never get to be unanimous in every vote.
That's a topic for another day.
That might
Because
be another
that'll be
bylaw.
another bylaw change if you want to do that.
yes, but what I'm saying, so the scenario that they raised, 6 people show up, 3 people can,
Well, 3 is not a majority though. So you need 4. You'd always need 4, the bare minimum.
Well, if you include the person who's the object of the vote, and if that person can't vote,
Well,
then
they-
you can only have 5 of the
they
6
could
people
vote.
voting.
No,
They probably, I
can't
don't
vote
think
on
they can,
this.
that's they gotta.
So it's abstaining, so yeah, you still need.
Say that.
It's a majority vote shall be one more than half of the votes cast excluding abstentions. That's what
No, we shouldn't have, I'm gonna ask her, we shouldn't have to say it.
You can have notice like a
In
long
the town conflict, but I will ask her.
That's the meeting, that's the meeting.
Yeah.
I have a comment related to your thing, Chris, and maybe I misunderstood, but if the board member who was the subject of a vote had to be present at a meeting, he or she could simply skip every meeting in order to.
Yeah.
That can't be obviously, yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
That was
What did-
only,
What do you?
If you have to be present on the night you're voted out, you could just never come,
Oh,
thus
right.
making
Yeah.
the vote.
we've already mixed that, it's just
Yeah,
it's
okay.
something that
No.
Chris Lanchon said in the research, but
No.
I think that's been.
Yeah,
No, because they're going to be notified by a letter,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Mhm.
and, you know,
That's
you know,
good.
Herb, just to mention something about the other UHLS library bylaws that I looked at, many of them have the term deemed resignation in there. That, like our current bylaws do, that if you miss 3 meetings, you are deemed to have resigned from the board. There's no vote, there's no nothing, you just resign. We're actually being a lot more generous, I think, here, and saying that we're gonna think about this and vote. We're not deeming anyone to have resigned, which is, I think, a generous thing to do.
Yeah, and actually mutated from originally considering the other thing.
Yeah,
We would
exactly.
say, you're resigned unless the board votes otherwise.
Right, exactly.
So this actually is a fairer procedure.
I think, didn't you say in the other one, you were notifying them by a letter or something?
Yeah.
Or somehow or other?
And several of the UHS
After
board members have
notification to
indicated
the
that,
absent.
you know, they have
Oh, yeah, it's
convinced
here. I'm
people to
sorry.
resign, you know, in these cases,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there.
rather than having to,
I
believe it.
go through this.
Okay, well, the purpose tonight was to get all of your comments out.
Yes,
Obviously, that's why we had
exactly.
that 30 days.
So let me make sure, can we just take a moment to make sure that I know what I'm checking with Chris on and if there's anything else? So I'm definitely checking on whether we have to state that the absent trustee who's the subject of the vote needs to recuse themselves. That's one question. What else was I?
Taking out majority.
I took out majority.
That's it.
And how do you inform the other absent member of the, either you have to send him him or her a registered
The-
letter?
I don't know that it has to be registered. I don't think there's any, I would believe that the president would send a letter. I don't believe it has to be, I don't know.
I
if
don't know
there's
what
any-
the legal, you know.
I mean, we can find that
niceties
out,
are.
but,
you could ask her what
Yeah,
the notification
yeah.
procedure would be.
yeah.
I
And
think
that-
anybody that's directed to provide the person notice,
Right,
that's like you give them notice, they get a phone call.
right.
And our bylaws provide that if a member cannot attend a meeting,
Mhm.
it says
I mean, when Chris gets back in touch and we deal with these couple of little changes, then the next step is gonna be, you'll get a copy of it again. We're not gonna be able to vote on it in May because there's not 30 days between now and the May meeting. So,
Can I,
yeah, sure.
I think as long as we've done the first reading now,
Yeah.
it just swaps over to the next one. I don't think we have to,
You don't think so?
I don't think.
Okay.
I mean, you can.
Okay, no, I mean,
Yeah, the only thing we took out was majority.
the only thing we took out was majority, and we may include something about recusal if it's not, if it's not an inherent conflict.
Yeah, we could vote next
Something about
meeting.
notification.
We could vote next meeting.
Oh, we could vote next
Yeah.
meeting, okay, okay. And
It
what?
says something about notification, the sentence that.
Well, I don't know,
residents will be
do you, I
notified.
don't know, do you think that we need to put something about notification in the bylaws, or is that just a procedure that we'll adhere to if it's required? I mean, I don't know that we need to include notification, how we notify in the bylaws. If we have to do, if we have to notify, which of course we do, we would have a procedure to do that. Does it have to be in the bylaws?
And that's Chris.
Oh, that's good.
Yes, we can always put up another policy, next month if it does need to be in the bylaws, it's not the end of the world. So,
Okay.
it wouldn't slow this process up.
Trustee who's been removed, is that what we did agree to take the last sentence out? The trustee who's been removed, what did we
Well, I
agree
think
on?
I
we
would
did,
like
because
to-
it said that, like, you didn't like the language, but it's already in the bylaws. I mean,
It's already in the law.
yeah, it's already law.
Okay.
Do we have to vote
Well,
on
I
that?
would still-
Because
I
there
would
were
still like to
people who
see it
did- There were people
so
who objected to
Majority
that.
rules.
What?
I'd still like to see that sentence left in.
About the trustee, okay, well, I don't know, Dan, how do you wanna,
Just take
Vote on
a
it.
sense of the board.
You'd like to see the sentence left in, but that it explains how it's being a law.
Well,
Is that what you're saying?
to me, it's clearer.
I would like to see it out.
And if you wanna take out the appointment, because
Yeah,
obviously if
take
the
out the
board had
appointment.
just put you off, you're not going to be appointed. But to me, for some person looking at it, it's just so much clearer. So I would lobby to put it in, whatever shape, manner, or form you'd want, but if the rest don't like it, then it stays
I
out.
think it's
But then,
it's for the benefit of the trustee who got removed, that it's in there. So
But
they
then-
know, so they're aware.
okay, but you don't want it to state that according to state law.
no, I don't want that phrase. I'm fine either taking the sentence out or leaving it in, but I don't want this provision of the bylaws to be any different from any other provision of the bylaw, which also mirrors the law, by stating in accordance with law.
Why don't we just check who would like to just leave it in then as is without referring to the law specifically?
Well, wouldn't we resolve that next meeting with a vote?
Well, we could do it right now to
She needs to know the sense of
resolve
the
it, yeah.
board,
Well, it doesn't need to be unanimous vote, does it?
No,
No.
I mean.
No,
it's
she's
the
just
sense.
taking a
Because
poll,
then
so
I
you need to
guess
put it in.
then the poll would give me an idea about what to present in final form.
That's
That's
good.
I would say leave it in.
In,
And
Take it out.
out, 2 outs,
I'm out.
3 outs, who's an out?
Do the other
1,
first.
2, 3, 4. I'm actually an out. I'm abstaining. I'm too involved, I abstain. 4, and how many are ins?
4, 5, 5.
1,
It's 4 to
2,
4?
3, 4, 5.
5.
I seriously, I really see both sides,
It just makes sense.
This is just direction. It's like when you have like terms, you know what I mean, and for your officers or whatever, you say, okay, you serve 6 terms and then you're not eligible for another year. This is kind of the same
think I
direction.
would
to
rather-
it. That's all I saw.
You know what, my inclination was to leave it in, which is why I
Yeah,
put it
right,
initially,
yeah.
I'm gonna go with my first instinct.
So you put it in and people vote on it or they
Right,
don't, I mean, or,
right,
you know,
right,
whatever.
right.
If people feel strongly, then we won't vote it
Okay.
forward. Or leave it out, whatever. Your committee has to go back to the committee and then you make a recommendation.
I
So
think
it's
so.
unless,
That's my suggestion.
unless,
Unless,
there's some other change that's militated by our
Chris.
council.
yes.
The only thing that comes out is by majority vote, right?
Just majority, 5
Just majority, the word majority comes out.
Just the word majority.
Correct? By a vote?
Okay.
How about by a vote?
The board can't do anything
By,
without a vote.
by a vote of the board,
I was gonna just ask that, by a vote of the board,
then we have to put at the meeting.
of the board at the meeting, immediately following the final absence.
And everybody understands the clarification on the number of meetings, right?
Yes. Yeah, I would just suggest
So
putting
that
two
doesn't
different
mean-
paragraphs, but that's sufficient.
One of the things that we ought to think about
If I
is,
can do it as a
since you've now tied it to committee absences, most people don't do minutes of those meetings, they do a report, and we may have to start doing reports.
Well,
So you start off
We
by
should be
saying
doing report, we should be
who was
doing,
present at the meeting,
we,
just to keep the record straight, okay?
open meetings law requires it. We should be doing it.
Yeah, we talked
Minutes
about
of
that.
plannings.
So we talked about that.
Yeah, we did.
I think we said that someone's gonna send him an email, just like know who's, in attendance or something.
Who are,
We should, like,
or for the committee chairperson.
yeah, we just have like a little, form that we fill
Yeah.
out and give out.
It's not a bad
Like, these
idea,
people
it
here, I
saves a
mean,
lot of time.
Yeah, exactly, we'll all have like a template and
Yep.
Or
we'll just hand it out to me.
an attendance sheet or something?
Yeah.
It'll
But
basically just say
typically,
attendance
the
will come.
chairperson's, the chairperson should be able, should be, it should be their responsibility.
Alright.
Okay,
Now remind us to do it if we have a template.
Yeah, a template would be good, though. It would remind us to do it, make it, anything make it easier.
You're gonna forget.
Oh, yeah, we definitely need the template.
okay, unless there's anything else on that, we'll revisit it.
So,
Next
our, right, so both of them next month. Okay.
For Upper Hudson,
Okay, Upper Hudson, first of all, there is a date set for the 56th annual dinner of the Upper Hudson Library System. It will be at the Albany Country Club, which is very convenient for, Guilderland, and that will be on June the 14th, 2017, I believe it's, is it a Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay, it's a Wednesday, and the sponsor will be MBT Bank, and there's a cocktail hour previous to the dinner, starting at 6:30. One of the major reasons for having the dinner is to make the awards, and there have been a dearth of nominees for the different awards. Tim Burke is going to try to get the directors again to take a look at this, and as such, he is changing the, the date at which those things have to be done, putting it ahead a week. So, if we have we had any nominees from Guilderland?
Yes, well, first of all, last year, Christina Ronald and Ann Wemple Person, Ann's in the room, won for the best adult program. This- which was the Hudson Valley Hops Beer Tasting Series. But yes, this year we nominated, again, one of Ann's programs, the Drug Take Back Day that we've held a couple times annually. And I'm actually, Maria Buell prepared the binder, the packet that you need to submit, and I'm dropping that off tomorrow at Upper Hudson Library System. Tomorrow is the original deadline, and I'm going to be in the neighborhood, so I thought I'd just physically drop it off. But yes,
Okay, and no one is nominated for any of the other awards?
not at this point.
Okay.
No.
Okay, there may or may not be
Who makes the
an
nominations?
award for the advocate, too, that's been spoken about at the various committee meetings, but I'm not sure that any decision has been made.
That's at Upper Hudson Committee?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with the Advocate Award. Basically, I get it, to answer your question, Chris, I get an email and I share it with the department heads, and there's an adult program award each year, a youth program award, a trustee of the year award. There is a fourth award. Herb or Margaret, do you remember the fourth one? Is it volunteer of the year?
Yes,
Volunteer of
that's
the
it.
year. Yep. And we had a program in mind for the youth award, but the application materials are not done yet for that. It was the Family Science Night series that Anne, is that Amy McCarthy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amy McCarthy headed up and really innovative in that each month she got a different local college group of science or science students to come in and do stuff. And you know, we have a lot of local colleges. So the desire was to nominate that program, but I learned today that they didn't have it done yet. Certainly tomorrow I can let them know they have another week. So.
What about Cindy Waterford, volunteer of the year, since you together all those volunteers?
If I could get a letter done tomorrow, I'd be happy to nominate Cindy. So, but, you know, I guess I'm gonna be quite frank and say that there are projects I'm working on that cost $500,000 and they're more important than writing a letter. So, I'll try.
One of the other things that was noted is that Senator Amador has more bullet aid this year. So,
Okay.
you know, so they indicated that the libraries in Senator Amador's district should, you know, apply if they can, if they have a project, you know, for this money, because he likes to contribute to large projects, unlike Senator Marchione, who just sends the same amount of money to every library in her district. Senator Amador likes to go in for the big splashy projects like the roof. You know, I don't know if there's another big splashy project coming up.
Well, maybe we could ask him if he'd like to pay for Paul Mays. The heat pumps have not been covered. We're gonna apply for the grant in the fall.
We lost out on that, on the money that was there last year, because we couldn't get it, you know, in
Right.
time. But, you know, there is a lot of money coming up for those projects. And another thing that Tim indicated is that we should get applications in for that money. There is talk about amending the bylaws of the Upper Hudson library system to allow reimbursements up to 75% for any library, not just the small libraries or poorer libraries.
And other systems apparently do it that way. I'm learning, everybody's eligible at 75. So, you know, I certainly like to recommend that you suggest or you vote that way if you get the opportunity, because if we could get out of the 50% category and into the 75%, it just leverages the money we've saved a lot better. And I have a bunch of responses for the things that you're saying. The budget that was just passed included not just a restoration of $5 million statewide in library aid money, but an additional $5 million beyond that. So the amount of money statewide is $10 million more than it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, the share of Upper Hudson was $444,000. It should be around $800,000. So that's looking good for us. I want to ask you, Herb, was your meeting this Wednesday?
Yes, that was yesterday.
Okay. Okay, so I'm not that upset with my colleague Tim Burke, but you know, he hasn't told any library directors yet that it's time to approach Senator Amador, so maybe he's doing that through you. But I'm glad to hear that. And then lastly, you're partly right that the paperwork didn't get in on time, but the paperwork was all done by me on time. State Ed would not accept it, okay? So I don't want to take responsibility for missing, sole responsibility for missing that.
No, as a school district library, we are, you know, have to go do things a certain way that, and have restrictions that other libraries don't have, and that's, you know, that is what.
But I met those restrictions in a temporal
Oh, I'm
sense.
not saying it's
Yeah.
your fault, it's that
Okay.
we, you know.
And And what is the issue with the state of,
State ed, of course, has jurisdiction over our land and our
Right.
building, and state ed believed that we were doing more than a one-for-one replacement of heat pumps and ceiling tiles. And our contention was that it was a one-for-one
Yeah,
replacement.
gotcha, yeah.
There's 26 of them, they're going in the exact same
Yeah,
spot.
okay.
They contended that there could be asbestos, but our research indicated that there isn't. You know, it's, it, in my opinion, is a matter of bureaucracy,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
I think one other thing I'd like to say about that tremendous gain in construction aid money is that, first of all, I'd like to thank the staff, the board, and the foundation for sending the emails that were requested and for coming to lobby day. But the machine is gonna have to gear up again soon because of the threat to the, from the president, to eliminate the Institute of Museum and Library Services, which funds approximately half of the jobs at the Department of Library Development downtown. So if that program of the federal government goes away, there's just no predicting what kind of chaos will be happening at the DLD. And you know, anything like, for example, our lighting grant that we still haven't been paid for, there's twice as many people down there right now who could theoretically pay us. We take half of those people away, things might take twice as long to do. There's another school of thought that, you know, leaner is more efficient, so if that happens, maybe that'll be true. But I'm going to be asking you again, as Nyla and Upper Hudson will be, to send emails to this time federal officials saying, please don't. And not only, we're all librarians here, but it really hurts museums as well to take that away.
Is it possible, seeing that we've done all the legwork and obviously state ed was crazy, and not saying could we approach Canada for any of that money towards that project?
We could certainly decide to go see Senator Amador on any front that we want to.
I said, why not? Can't hurt,
So-
he likes big projects.
And he's been generous to the library.
Very.
Yes.
And he put out a Facebook post today about how important libraries are to the Senate and to him. So I'm happy if we make an appointment and go see him. You know.
Anybody have any influence with President Trump?
He never returns my calls.
Well, one other thing though is that there was a libraries equal education presentation that people were raving about. There was this woman, Valerie Gross, from that's the president and CEO of the Howard County Public Library System, and in her position, she apparently is able to dictate policy for for all the libraries in her county, unlike the situation in Albany County or Rensselaer County. Did you go to that, Tim?
I did. We had it here because we have such a great meeting room, a large meeting room that Upper Hudson uses it when their things get bigger than about 35 people. So I think we had about 55 people. 7 of our staff, I think, went to it. And we had a department heads meeting yesterday, and our department heads were very interested in it. And I would like to talk about it for just a minute or two. Basically, she's been able to change the discourse in Howard County, Maryland, and instead of using a lot of traditional terms that relate to libraries and librarianship, they call themselves an educational institution. Their librarians are educators. They don't hold programs, they hold classes. And it goes on and on and on. She happens to be not the library director, but the president and CEO. And by reframing the debate, apparently, like the example, she used many examples, but the very quick one to give to you, you're on an airplane, people say, what do you do for a living? You say, I'm a librarian. I can tell you from personal experience, it sometimes shuts down the conversation. People say, oh, you read a lot of books. So there are stereotypical notions of what librarians do. But if you say you're an educator, often it opens up the conversation. And Howard County was able to provide double-digit growth in its budget for libraries for several years in a row, and also for not double-digit raises for its staff, but healthy raises for its staff every year, when neighboring counties in Maryland were cutting, because the rhetoric worked, and it's been adopted at various library systems throughout the country, and wherever it's been tried, it has worked. So one of the things we did today is that we got the slides from her presentation and sent them to department heads and said, you can share them with your staff in any way that you want. And I also said, if you want me to pull the staff together to talk about it at 9 o'clock some morning before we open, we can certainly do that. And then another thought that we've had is to spend a portion of our day on Staff Development Day in June talking about that concept. So there is, in some people, including in myself, a little bit of a resistance to it. It involves really rethinking a lot of what we do, but it appears to work. So it's something we should take a look at. And yeah, we were happy to host it. Tim, I think, likes to bring groups here because of that great meeting.
And that's my report.
Okay, thanks, Herb. Foundation people aren't here yet.
Coming at 8:30.
Anytime.
By the way, where is their meeting?
It's in the Norman School.
Tim, you're next.
Okay.
Well, let me just do a couple things on the
Sure.
foundation, just because
Sorry.
Okay.
I missed the last meeting, but someone was in the hospital, but just, there's a couple of things that have come up. I think that we've got a nice new event that Tim knows more about this than I do, but Marty of Powell, am I gonna say this big Casey Stengel thing, so it's a big deal, so kudos, but I know it's a big deal, so people can talk about that. But I think something came up regarding, and when I wasn't at the last meeting, about this event that everybody wants to do jointly about the building and the celebration of the 25 years, right? So we just wanna, I think their impression is, and I'm not sure what happened in the meeting, they wanna join forces, right? I was so excited about joining forces, they were doing a Glen Peter event, so I went to Glen Peter, but they canceled the event, so that was in my mix of, yeah, they
I
didn't
was
send,
wondering when that
I know,
was.
they didn't send something out, I am like without a secretary at the moment, so it was like, wow, I was very happy to be there, so, but that was that was one of my misses. But they are very much about, I was surprised to see that they think that there's not a misstep, and this is probably, I think this is much before me. They think like it's not an us and them, but they think it's a little bit of like, is there support? Do they really care about the foundation? And I'm like, listen, since I've been involved, this is all one big group, right? So everybody is working together. So if there's anything that I can be helpful with there and here, everybody supports, everybody goes to the fundraisers. We know we raise for each other. So just keep that in mind, I guess, when we're talking. And the other thing was something came up about, there was questions about whether or not we wanted to close the library for this event. So I wasn't clear, so I wanted to be clear before they came in, because I think this is all about a celebration and a fundraiser for the community. So that's a question, and I wasn't sure what the concern was. If we have an event in October or September and October to celebrate, right, the 25 years, it's kind of a fundraiser, something in the evening. If we put notice out that we'll close the library, I just wanted to make sure I was up to speed. If we did that. I know that there was some question.
I could summarize the
Yeah,
question.
great, thanks.
If I'm the appropriate person to do that.
No, I just want, before they came, I just wanted us to be on the same page.
So,
Excuse me.
I had missed the previous foundation meeting because of.
I was at that one, so
Okay.
you were at the next one.
Yep, and so then I got passed a note at the last board meeting, are you gonna ask, can we close the library on one of these 2 dates? So I asked, can we close the library? And discussion ensued about the nature of that event, and because I had missed that foundation
Okay,
meeting,
so that's good, yeah.
I wasn't, all that
Yeah.
conversant on
Okay.
what was being planned.
Mhm.
I'm perhaps guilty of making an assumption that you would vote to do that regardless, just on the, idea that the foundation presumably knows what it's doing, but trustees rightfully raised some questions, and the first question that was raised had to do with why they were doing a cocktail party in the library as opposed to a gala dinner at a place like the Albany Country Club. And a discussion ensued about that, and the foundation had voted not to do that.
Right.
It was kind of a burnout effect.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely, there's not a wherewithal for, I think, to do it.
And a discussion ensued where some trustees felt that a gala was a very important thing to do, and other trustees said, well, it's so much work that if you'd like to help, maybe they'd vote again. I think then the idea developed that there just wasn't enough information in this room to approve the closure in October. And I think the idea was, why don't we invite the foundation to come
Oh, okay,
tonight?
so that's good. So that's, I mean, is there a, just so I can try to be the liaison when is there a flavor of, I think the point was to have, show people what our building is, to get them in. So whether it's cocktails or not, is there something about not closing it or not, having it here, or?
Well,
Sure,
we're
Phil.
open to the public, right?
Right, right.
And the whole idea
Ticketed
is
event.
that the anniversary, we're gonna be closing the library early.
Well,
I
but,
guess-
yeah,
I
I
think
think they could be, I mean, it can be, but it would be a ticket function, I guess, that would be it.
For, this is,
Yeah.
I'm speaking for myself
Yeah.
personally, and I've had this conversation with Rosemary,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I'm not
sure.
telling
Yeah,
you
yeah.
anything that she
Yeah, yeah.
doesn't already
Okay.
know. I have had this ongoing question to the foundation about, it's great to raise money, but
Yeah.
what are you raising money for? And if we're being asked to close the library to our patrons,
Right.
what are we
Mhm.
getting in return?
Mhm.
And we have yet, I'm delighted to know that they might be more involved in the fall maze
Mhm.
conversation and process, because they'll get a better sense about what our needs are, and we'll get a better
Mhm.
sense of how we would like the foundation to support us. But right now, when it was presented that they wanted to close the library, I wasn't really sure how the library was gonna benefit from
Yeah,
that
well, so that's good information for me, because I
That's
didn't
just my
realize that, so.
personal
Good, okay.
view of it. Others
Okay,
might
Yeah.
have different
Uh-huh.
views.
I think the other question is, was closing the library
Yeah.
versus having it on Sunday after the library
Sure,
closes, or
yeah.
Saturday after the library
Yeah.
closes.
Sure.
There was a dearth of information.
Yeah, no, gotcha, all right, good, okay. Good. So there, I think Steve Waxman's come today, because Rosemary's not here, so.
Yeah, who is, he's
Got
good.
it. So, but they're very interested in working together, support,
As
so I
well-
think
as
that's what we,
we-
as we are,
as
and
we-
I
as we are.
presented that, yeah.
Okay, Tim.
Okay, staff and directors report. Thankfully, we've covered a bunch of it. Carol Cott, Margaret, myself, and Maria Buell and Roseanne Marcantonio had, I think, 10 meetings since we last spoke with you to talk to, it was either 9 or 10, to talk to 3 different payroll vendors and work on choosing a new payroll vendor to transition to.
Right there.
Yes.
This topic is executive session.
Right, I'm not gonna talk about
Oh,
the
okay.
vendors' names or the contract amounts until later, but I just wanted to say that we're ready to make a recommendation later this evening. And I do definitely thank Maria and Roseanne, not just as individuals, but in their role as CSEA unit presidents for helping. It was a very valuable perspective. We've had the first initial meeting with the ME Engineering Company concerning the heat pumps project. We have an important meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. Lou, myself, and the representatives from ME. The current on-paper cost of the entire thing is a little bit higher than you've heard before. The last number I've given you was $507,000, and it's now at $541,000. The difference is largely contingency that's been built in. And I don't think it's actually gonna cost $541,000 once it's bid out. But no way to really know until you actually put it out to bid, and see what people, what they bid on it. So anyway, we have a meeting on that tomorrow. David Gilliam, who's on vacation this week, has been spending a lot of time, in fact, all of his time, working on fixing systemic problems with our reporting to the New York State retirement system. It's a very important, it's not an issue, it's a set of issues where we have an obligation to get this information right. It's very complicated and detailed, and what he has done so far is he's reconciled The fiscal year for the retirement system ends on March 30th, so he's reconciled the fiscal year that just ended, as well as the 2 previous years. The 4th year back is the first year that we were with GTM, and he needs to begin looking at that. We meet monthly with Roseanne and Maria and Eric and Charles, the 2 LRSs from the union, to update them on the progress. And I think that one of the things we said at our meeting last week was that we believe we've found every type of error, and we believe we've found every error in the previous 3 fiscal years. It's that fiscal year before that where the errors still need to be found. But in order to expedite the process, we've decided to start turning in some of the reports to the New York State retirement system in order to correct some of the things from the 3 previous fiscal years. So that's ongoing. We have another meeting date with those union representatives, basically 3 weeks-ish from now, because we met last week. So it's the primary focus, other than transitioning the payroll vendor for Margaret, myself, and Carol, and David Gilliam. One thing just to let you know, Pat Fahey has been doing a series of conversations with the public about the new New York State budget. She will be here this coming Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Mark and I are both on vacation next week, so Margaret will be in charge of that program. I was talking to Alyssa Kane from her office today, and the one at Bethlehem Public Library the other night, they only had 15 or 20 people at, so maybe it won't be a huge event. But Pat's history here at GPL is whenever she's spoken, there's been a very good crowd. So if you want to hear more about the budget, please come by Wednesday night at 6. I had a real pleasant experience running a concert done by the Guilderland High School choir and chamber strings groups on Sunday, April 2nd, and it was within the Helderberg room where that beautiful art show is up of the 5 elementary school art programs, K to 5, and it was just a really nice day of interface between the school district and the public library. And if you haven't seen that art exhibit, it's worth stopping in there to see it. I would like to call your attention to page 24, the last paragraph of Maria Buell's report about the PPS department. Is a wonderfully written and accurately detailed account of Ann Wempel-Person's appointment as town historian. And we're very pleased for Ann. I think at the last board meeting, it was like the day before the board meeting or something that you were appointed. And so we mentioned it then, but Maria has really written it up very nicely there. And lastly, we had just a neat effort, an idea by Kim LaPlante, who is a clerk in our Access Services Department, which we used to know as the Circulation Department. And Kim wanted to have, I'm going to let people get settled here. Kim wanted to have fresh flowers at the circulation desk, so she asked her department head, Phil Berardi, and myself, if she could go around and talk to local businesses that sell flowers and see if she could get them donated. So she approached 5 or 6 such vendors. I wrote 4 of them down and didn't have time to write the other 2 down, but Hewitt's, Gates, Hannaford, and Price Chopper are all agreeing to give us flowers for the circulation desk, and the first batch will show up tomorrow. And do you happen to know the other 2 vendors or any of the CERT people? Okay. They were businesses I hadn't heard of, like garden-related businesses that I hadn't heard of that are in Guilderland. So it was just a nice initiative on Kim's part, and anything we can do to brighten the library up and take pride in our physical plants, I think this could be commended. So the rest of my report you can read about. If you have any questions, I'm right here.
I think this report is complete.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the director's report.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, we're gonna move back up the agenda to foundation again. Steve, did you want to say a few words or someone else?
Yeah.
Want me to say a few words?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can come up here too.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to get you on camera, boss. Make you a star.
Let's see here.
Hey, could we start by introducing the
Yeah.
foundation members who
Sure.
came in? So-
My name is Steve Waxman.
Brian Greger.
Kelsey Dorado. Hillary Colden.
Diane Martin.
Hi folks, Mike Lasser.
And maybe we should introduce the board members too.
Dan Senti.
Brian Best, Chris Aldridge.
Peter Hubbard.
Herb Hennings.
Karen Kirkwood Pointo.
Judy Kahn, Carol Williams.
Jason Wright.
We just were introducing everyone, so we introduced all the foundation members and board members, except for you, Rosemary.
Rosemary.
So-
Oh, good.
You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Rosemary Revore. I'm president of the foundation, and I think I have a handout someplace.
I left them in the mailbox. Who picked them up?
Oh, it's the middle envelope, it's still in the mailbox. Okay.
Tap dance.
Thanks. I can start without it.
What do you feel more comfortable sitting or standing?
Possibly.
Oh,
Thank you, Brian.
no problem.
I apologize for not getting here sooner. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having the foundation here with the trustees. We really wanted to join together a little more than we have, and it's nice to be able to put faces together with names. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to say that we have a really dynamic foundation board now. It's the best I've ever seen. And that presents a wonderful opportunity for the library and the trustees, and I think it's an opportunity that we need to take advantage of. And one of the ways that I'd like to propose tonight that we do that is in the celebration of the anniversary of the building and the library. The 2560 anniversary, as I've referred to it. So I have a proposal that's being passed around. The reason that I think it's such a good time is the foundation has struggled with not having, with the library not having a master plan or a 5-year plan or a long-term plan. And finally, we're really excited that with Butler, Rowland, and Mays on board, that they'll be identifying some of the needs of the library, and we're hoping that in the next few months, they will not only be able to identify, but prioritize and put cost estimates with some of those needs. Because when you're fundraising, people want to know where is the money going. And certainly we can explain some of the programs that are going on, but if we're interested in taking any initiative and making some improvements to the physical plant, then we need to have concrete figures and specifics to give them. And, you know, that's what we're hoping for and excited about with this architectural firm being on board. So the proposal that you have in front of you is based on a subcommittee meeting, coming up with some ideas of holding an event here in the library. And the reason for that is that we want people to see both the beauty of the library, but also the things that need to be addressed. And I think that we can do it in a very beautiful and creative way, so that it could be an elegant evening, as well as pointing out some of the issues that we have that we would like to address. So we have down here dates, time, what we had in as
as far as our ideas, was to use various rooms throughout the library. We have a theme about getting all jazzed up for the Guilderland Public Library and having a jazz ensemble perform, hopefully a local jazz ensemble. So it would be, the fundraising effort would be not unlike the gala, but without the tremendous amount of work it involved for foundation members. We're looking at a more affordable cost so that would, there are other people that perhaps couldn't have attended the gala because of the cost, might be able to now. We are looking to have some silent auction items and some sponsorship, but again, it's not with the same pressure that you have when you're holding a gala and you have that many things to consider. It would be toned down a little bit. And to do that, we would also, the foundation would be willing to underwrite the cost of some high top tables that would be used throughout the library and would stay with the library for future events. And also would take care of underwriting any promotional efforts that we needed to do. We've identified what the staffing impact would be, since I understand that that's a concern and a legitimate one. We identified the people that would be affected. They could continue to do their work while the function was going on, or if they were inclined to want to become involved, we would certainly welcome that too. So what we are really looking for is for your engagement, involvement, participation at any level. Yes?
One of the things that we questioned was a Thursday evening versus after the library closed on a Saturday, or even Saturday, in the sense, library would be closed, we wouldn't lose patron time, and people would be more accessible, not having to go to work the next day.
Right. We had actually talked about that, and the feeling was that it's so difficult for people, particularly in the fall, that so many people are away for weekends. It's college weekends. It's anyone that has a child in college, that's usually when they have parents' weekend. There are a lot of activities on the fall weekends already, and it competes with trying to do something on a weekend night, besides the fact that there are many board members that wouldn't be able to participate. So the sense was that we would draw a much bigger crowd if it was an after-work affair. That was the consensus. And that's one of the things when you're working with volunteers, as you probably know, you need to go with what the group wants to do. You don't direct people. You don't tell them, you're going to do this and you're going to do that, because they'll say, see you later. What you do is you try and incorporate their ideas and take into consideration their feelings. Many people have young families, just the competing interests that everyone sitting around in this room has. And that's what we factor in. And I know that there was disappointment that there wouldn't be a gala this year, but we were one short of it being a unanimous decision by the foundation that we needed to put it off for a year because it was just such a tremendous amount of work.
Rosemary, the other question that came up, because I missed the last one, was just, is there something when we did this, because I think everybody was pleased about the, kind of focusing together on the 25th. But is there something that we would earmark and say, so we could have kind of a joint agenda, people came into the library, but we were gonna focus on getting what, you know what I mean, for the environment, something specific that
That's exactly,
we know it was gonna target.
That's exactly what we want to do and why it's
Right.
so important that we have that information prior to a celebration.
Right.
And that we're
So we
hoping
would
the
all agree,
architectural
yeah.
firm.
Mhm.
because, you know, the foundation has wanted for a while to have a specific
Yeah, so
need
we, yeah.
that can be addressed.
So we would, before then, we'd come up with something
Absolutely.
we need, whether it's
So
painting,
it could be
plants.
something like, keep bringing up the carpet,
Yeah.
the godforsaken carpet. So, you know, we can have this looking really beautiful and the lights dimmed and a nice celebration going on. And when you wanna call attention to what the purpose is of us being here, the lights are turned up. And we say, you know, take a look down, look around, you know. This carpet really is deplorable. That's part of the reason we've invited you here tonight. We also want to use it as an opportunity to kick off an annual campaign. And I think that that's very important if you want to see regular, ongoing contributions coming into the library. We really need an annual campaign, much like what Bethlehem Library is recently doing.
Just getting back to the Thursday evening versus Saturday, I think most of your college parent weekends are in October, so if we did it in September, could we do it on a Saturday?
It really was the consensus that we needed a Thursday night. I mean, I would say, go around the room and say to people here, I mean, let's do a show of hands. Who feels a Saturday night would draw a bigger crowd and would be more interested on a Saturday night than a Thursday night?
I think they weren't talking Saturday, I think they were talking, it's one point Sunday in the garden, you know what I mean, all over, but, I think that just to represent the discussion was they were a little concerned about closing it down, you know, for an event, you know what I mean, when we're saying open to the public, get more people in, but we're closed tonight, you know what I mean, for an event. That, I think that was more the issue, solely understanding that people volunteered and, you know, that's a nice night to have an event.
Right.
You know, just trying to, you know,
And
match both
And I
purposes.
understand that, I think we tried to minimize
Yeah.
that by the time that we
Yes,
were looking
absolutely,
at.
yeah.
I mean, there was some talk
Yeah.
earlier of,
Yeah.
you know, having it 5 to 7,
Right,
which,
sure.
you know, would really be cocktail hour kind of time, but that wouldn't be ideal for library patrons, so let's move it up a little bit and, you know, try and meet somewhere in the middle of the road.
Yeah, I think you'll get a better draw on Thursday night personally.
Yeah.
than Saturday.
You'll get a different draw too, which is important.
It's a business draw, I mean, that's a
Yep.
typical, you know.
And they're the ones with the money.
Yeah.
Not that we don't want to appeal to everyone, but.
For a joint effort to kind of like a joint goal, as you may know, and the board knows, we have Paul Mays coming in, his consulting firm, kind of sprucing up the library. And you kind of mentioned the carpets, but what if and I'm addressing this to the entire board, what if we tied this Paul Mays thing into the foundation?
That's what you might have been gone at
Oh.
that time. But that's basically what we want to do is we want to see the report. We'd like to have his idea of what should be prioritized and cost estimates. Certainly, some things would be more affordable for us to promote than others.
Right.
And until we see, you know, what the dollar value is, I mean, it might be addressing the bathrooms, but we really don't know. And
I
you
mean,
want to.
if you want to bring people in, it's got to be, you know, excuse my word, but like something sexy, like, you know, like the carpets. I know it's probably just an example, but I
It's
don't
just
think
an example.
yeah.
It might be lighting, it could be paint, it could be murals, I mean, who knows, I mean, like, right, but it would
Or
be a
it might
targeted
be
campaign.
something necessary and not so sexy, and then something that is sexy to go with it.
Could be a children's room, everybody, you know what I mean,
that's the
whatever,
kind of thing
yeah,
people
that's
love,
more,
absolutely.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, okay.
Any other questions or concerns or ideas?
For the jazz group, could you use the middle school and high school jazz ensemble?
I think that that would be wonderful. Yeah, high school group would
Probably the high school.
probably be. Yeah, the more you can make it a local community event.
Middle school principal.
Oh,
You could have both. I can certainly look into that. That would be a wonderful time.
I think so.
And actually, if you did have both, you could
Different
have.
pockets, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Say, yeah.
One
yeah,
area and the
yeah.
other. Different zones.
Yeah.
The other benefit of that is you would draw families of the players
Absolutely.
to attend.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
So our middle school band is jazz ensembles.
All right,
Very
bring 'em
good.
in.
The high school
Bring 'em in,
is
too.
just as good.
Yeah, and you know, fill the library with people
Right.
celebrating
Right.
this occasion, so to have groups in different parts, I think would be wonderful.
Is this just 1 year you're thinking about doing this, or is this the anticipation that this is how we're going to do it from this point?
No, I think this is just for this upcoming year. I don't, it's to celebrate the anniversary.
Well, I think, here's the deal, I mean, I think it's an opportunity to highlight both events. We have a 25-year anniversary that we can highlight, we can highlight the facility. If we can identify some things that the consulting firm is saying we're in need of, then that becomes the focus of the event. So you wanna come and you help sponsor X, on the 25th anniversary, you know, the next time we're gonna have this chance is in 5 years, when it's the 30th. So, you know, if we capitalize on it this year, that doesn't mean we can't do a gala next year and moving forward, but we won't have this option next year in terms of the celebration piece, the 25th anniversary of the quadrentennial. So I think that also played into the decision making and the conversation, for sure.
And I think when the reports come from Paul Mays, I think they're due about July 2nd, if I was just glancing at it. They should give us the template for every year's fundraising events, you know, and you're not gonna raise all of it in 1 year, I don't think, but,
Right.
you know, if the goal is, you know, 50,000 a year, you know, that's some real money.
And, you know, it would be the beginning of an annual campaign that would occur every year. You know, it's, and fall is a perfect time for that. You want people to remember who you are when it comes to their year-end giving. I think we want to capitalize on that. But as far as events, I think that, we're open to ideas of doing new and different and exciting things that we can get some enthusiasm generated.
Rosemary, got a question.
Sure.
Are you sending out any special invitations to special people associated with the past of the library, like the 3 previous directors that are still living?
We would certainly include them. Basically, what we would do is, send invitations to the people that have attended previous events, as well as everyone here. But yes, we've always included the previous directors. And, town officials and. But we'd simplify it in that, you know, we're looking at, you know, what has bogged us down in the past in events that we've held, and we said, you know, we can advertise this in advance, you know, save the date, this is what the library's doing. But then have a postcard invitation where you RSVP online. Because we don't have staff to do all the nitty-gritty work, and it is a tremendous time.
I have a logistical question.
Sure.
It'll be catered, right?
Yes.
Is it like pass-arounds, or it's not dinner, it's hors d'oeuvres, that's
Right.
right? So the caterer probably won't need much more than about an hour in advance of the event. I'm trying to
Right.
think about really when you would ask for the library to be closed.
No more than an hour in advance.
Okay, so we're talking like a 5:30 closure. Okay.
Well, that presents a difficulty
Oh.
staffing-wise, because we work 9 to 5.
Oh, or a 5 o'clock closure.
I would suggest 5, only because that's when our
Not
shifts change.
earlier than 5.
Right.
Let's put it that way. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just
And
so-
that's sort of stuff we can work with.
Yeah, I just was
you
trying
on,
to figure
whatever.
out how long would we
We have lots of flexibility.
want the how long are you at? How long would the library be closed for? That was the question. So now we know it wouldn't be closed before 4:00.
And it makes sense to work around when the shift ends and another one begins.
Rosemary, if this were to go forward, what would be the latest that you would think you would need authorization for this?
I would say that we would really need to know in the next month to really get it underway. I mean, it really gives you just the summertime for all the planning. Particularly if we're looking for any kind of community support through sponsorship.
Okay.
All right?
Does anyone have any more questions?
No, I just want to say thank you to
No,
everyone.
it's a
To
good,
Kate,
it's a good effort.
to come. I mean, it's nice to see faces, people that I don't know. faces to see again. And thank you clearly for a lot of legwork, it's obvious, and I know you addressed a lot of questions that I had, so I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having us.
Before you leave, I'd like to just brief the board very briefly about the two notable author events that are coming up. We were passing around the Casey Stengel book. That's Thursday, May 4th, and it is getting just tremendous press coverage and reviews. It's in its third printing already, and it's been out for like a month. So Marty will be here May 4th, 7 p.m. It's a non-ticketed event. We're just interested in the buzz that the book is causing, so we decided to up the order of books from 36 to 72, and just don't want to be in a position of running out of books. Good publicity, getting shared a lot on Facebook, so that's just a good thing to know. The second is that David Oshinsky, the author of The History of Bellevue Hospital called Bellevue, is here on June 22nd, and I was excited about that before the other day when I found out he's actually a Pulitzer Prize winner for his book on polio, which was called Polio. And so the foundation's doing a great job bringing in authors. So, thank you.
This is a great Father's Day gift. I have 2 orders to place.
All right. We'll have to use that in marketing.
Yes.
Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks for having us.
Take it easy.
Good to see you. Bye,
You
bye,
too,
Margaret.
thank
Good to see you.
Sure.
Doctor?
You good, sir? You good? Doctor?
Good to see you, buddy.
Okay. We could go to new business. Mark, is an add cross gates that you want?
You all have the article that was announced on advertising about the huge tax rate that Fairness Corporation is asking for the ADA in Billwood. And what I was hoping for is that we could, send a letter on behalf of the board to Don Sayfox, who's the head of the ADA, basically sharing the fact that we need a couple of tax recognition. And what they're requesting is far over and above, what is normally granted in an IDA application. So, I didn't know if any of you had already, read this stuff or knew about it, but I would really recommend that we take the position of opposing this huge tax rate.
Is there any way we could quantify that we're talking about? The, how much we would do?
That I don't know usually, what they're asking for a 50% reduction for the first 5 years, and 10% after the first 5 years. Plus sales tax, the town loses out, the school district loses out, the library board loses out. And what they're saying is that there are maybe 55 temporary construction jobs and 50 permanent jobs in the hotel. And, some would argue that, well, 50 jobs is better than nothing. And, on the other hand, the tax rate that they're asking for a mortgage tax rate, sales tax rate, and then, the normal taxes that they, property taxes that they would pay. So, as I said,
library would lose?
We don't know.
We don't know,
We
no
just
idea.
asked that.
But there must, there must be someone who can quantify that.
Well-
Someone has to be able to project that. I mean, not necessarily around the table necessarily, but.
Let me, by no means am I an expert in this stuff, but I have two responses to what you're saying. One is that, as I read the article, they were looking for relief on $2 to $3 million worth of taxes and spending about $29 million. And we would reap a benefit from what they are spending because it's construction in the school district. So that's one comment. The second is that my understanding is if they get these tax breaks, they make a payment. I don't know if the payment is to the town, the school district, or both, but a pilot, payment in lieu of taxes. And that historically, the GPL, to my understanding, has not pressed its position with the school district that we are entitled to a portion of pilots within the district. There are currently no pilots within the district. I asked Neil Sanders about it when we were doing the tax levy calculation this year. But Tim Burke assures me, as do directors of other libraries, that when there are pilots in your school district, you're entitled to a portion of the pilot payment that the school district gets. Now, I have no idea if it's, sloppy seconds compared to what it would be on if they didn't get a tax break. But I think an associated issue is we need to resolve, in my opinion, as a group, to address the school district that we want our share if there's a pilot payment. Chris Lane Chanton and I was in a meeting once with Chris Lane Chanton and Jeff Honeywell, the school's attorney, about the land ownership of the paper road behind us. And this kind of thing came up, and both lawyers agreed that when there is a pilot payment, the library, if it's a school district library, is entitled to it. So, to me, I'm not at all trying to disagree with you, Barbara. I just think that if it goes through, we have another responsibility, in my opinion, as a board, which is to pursue our fair share of the pilot.
They probably won't get the whole amount either.
Right, right, okay.
Well, I missed that, Barbara.
So pilot payments are never what you would normally have gotten through property taxes.
So then if you decided as a board to oppose the tax breaks, that wouldn't mean that in the future, if they went through anyway and there were pilots, then you could, yeah.
But still,
Pilot payments are usually made by nonprofit and non-taxable completely organizations such as, the diocese or, colleges or organizations like that.
I think Beverwood had a pilot agreement many years ago. It has a.
So, it's not this, that's not.
Right.
So,
Yeah, but this, I have a question. These people would be paying some taxes anyway. The taxes that they're asking for certain exemptions, but that wouldn't mean that they would not be paying taxes at all.
Should we get some kind of clarification on this? We're obviously not opposed to any, their sales tax or mortgage recording tax that has an impact on us. We're only concerned with the property tax, which if I recall from the article is like 1.4 million, is that they were looking to be exempt from. So that's really our problem. So then I guess in both Chris and I, we were looking through the article and we wanted to know is this exempt from all their taxes or, because it doesn't say anywhere that I can find in the article, is that 1.4 million everything they pay or would pay?
No, and it's a limited number of years.
Barbara said it was, that was in this article, I didn't see it, but Barbara said it was 50% for the first 5 years.
Oh, yeah, that was not in this article, but you may know that.
Times Union has an article on it, so it may have been that one.
Barbara, is the school board taking a position?
We sent out a letter asking a few questions, one of which was, what would you lose, basically?
Well, that's, yeah.
And so we're definitely exploring it. Because,
So does the in your position as a board member of both entities, do you think that our questions are the same?
Pretty much.
So, do you want to draft a letter and circulate it among us to see if it addresses our concerns?
The school board letter that.
Well,
Oh,
or
when
you
we
draft
get the
one on behalf of the library and.
Well, we would need to do a letter, we would just extract the information that they received, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is it
We
the
would
same-
not,
I
we
mean-
would not be advocating on our own behalf. We would not be sending a letter on.
No,
our
but we
own
don't
behalf.
even know how this works, and
That's
how to
what I'm-
figure out how it would,
So you're saying we shouldn't be asking questions on our own behalf, we should just wait till we find out what the school board finds out?
No, I wasn't saying, I'm just thinking that our questions would be answered by those questions, I think, wouldn't it? The impact?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, they would have a much greater impact, obviously, on their budget than me on our budget.
That
But
would
they're
be
not-
asked the IDAs you drafted this letter to?
Yeah, well, yeah, to the town,
Look,
not to us.
I just wonder why wouldn't we ask the same questions as it pertains directly to the library, and clearly this, I mean, I think the questions would be the same, but the answers are gonna be different because the amounts are gonna be different.
Right.
Yep, I agree.
Well, can we get a copy of the
That's
letter?
what I was asking,
And,
I thought you.
For the next meeting, and,
Well, I would say, because I think they're gonna be making the decision before our next meeting. So what I would do is issue the letter that Neil sent.
they're gonna schedule the IDA meeting before
Yeah,
the
no,
August
no,
meeting?
the hearing process.
Because they have to do a rezone first, right?
They have to,
That's what that
Oh,
article says.
the IDEA is separate from the rezone and the rest. The IDEA is kind of separate.
Well,
Is
the
there
article
a
says
hearing
the IDA
process?
meeting will be scheduled after the rezone, which hasn't taken place. That's what, at least that's what I
I've
read.
already gone through to the planning board.
So,
I don't know if the ZBA is done yet.
it has gone through the planning board?
Yeah.
The cost case has?
No, the cross gates, the plant, the building, the rezoning itself, the 6.4 acres that
Oh,
the
right, that's
planning
gone.
board is supporting that. They
That's already
originally
been
wanted
rezoned.
12, yeah, they originally wanted 12
Yeah.
acres.
Yeah, that's been rezoned by the town board already. And,
So is the plot 12 acres in total? And they're using 7 for the
They're using
hotel?
6.4 or something like that,
For the hotel.
for the hotel, yes.
yeah. Yeah, I forget what's the best.
it sounds like there's, it says, the last paragraph says there's, the next step is a public hearing.
I
What's the
think
date of this article?
the
March
newspaper
30th.
had a better
Oh,
article.
March 30th?
There's an article here that says rezone for Crossgates Hotel okayed by building.
What was that date?
For April 6th, they've already been rezoned.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well,
Can you-
They had
so
the town
there's
board
some,
article on the land.
That's where I started.
There-
with that.
there's some, it's, I don't, maybe we can verify this, that there's a, after the public hearing, and do you think it's that hearing, there'd be a vote by the IDA.
Okay.
Probably shortly after that hearing.
All right, it might be the zoning hearing, yeah.
Well, clearly, there's,
Okay, the IDA, which is independent of the town board, is expected to vote on the tax break sometime in May.
okay, that's a good, that's
Okay.
good information.
In that article.
Is that from the Times Union?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does
Times
it
Union
say
has better article.
anything, not, I'm sorry, I should do the research, but if you have it right in front of you, does it say anything, is there public comment in front of the IDA?
Actually, unfortunately, this article that I'm looking at is only about the rezone. It just
Okay.
happens to
It's
mention that.
They
But I
did have an IDA public comment. I don't know if they're going to have another one. They did have one.
Why don't we do Crossgates IDA public hearing, March public hearing? Because that's when the article was written, right about the same time. as
Mark,
this.
when was the letter
Yeah,
sent
yeah,
by,
I think I found the
school
article.
board?
Well, Thursday was our meeting, so it probably
Yeah,
went
putting
out.
in,
Well, we don't need to do a resolution to do a letter. Could you get it to Tim?
But I'm
and-
saying if we can get his letter to you and just same kind of questions, basically, as applied to us,
Yeah.
if we're concerned and we need this additional information. Just getting back to Brian, in that Times Union article is where they want the 50%, the first, I think, 4 or 5 years, and then 10%.
You can't break that into the library.
Who was the letter addressed to?
What was the question?
There was mention, I think from Brian, of a public hearing, maybe a board member should be at the public hearing. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out right now. Plus Ann's hotel application.
It's like a March public hearing.
Is that help?
Yeah, that was in March.
Was in March.
You already had
Yeah.
one.
Notice of public hearing, March 29th.
Yeah. Right.
So the article will be right the next day, March 11th, probably.
Regular board meeting tomorrow night.
Probably are we
Everyone's
accepting
for
written
that.
comments still? Sure.
Regular board meeting.
The IDA.
What did you say, Brian? I missed
They
that.
have a regular IDA board meeting tomorrow night.
On a Friday night.
On Good Friday?
On Friday night?
Really? Wow.
Yeah, Friday, April 14th. With,
What time?
That is crazy.
8:15 a.m.
Oh,
8:15 a.m.?
AM this morning,
Yeah.
so.
No, that.
It is?
Thanks, I know that one too.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
That's it, you know.
Okay, I don't, they don't think they mentioned this
Where's the meeting?
project.
I think you
Town
write
hall.
comments to the chairman.
Yeah, but you, I mean, if someone wanted to comment, I'm sure you can comment on anything, you don't have to just comment on this,
Yeah.
their agenda. Oh, no, review, no, they're reviewing the
All right.
comments from public proposed the project, so. So,
So there's still opportunity to provide written comment.
possibly.
Not much.
Well, but, you know, if we, I can't,
I would sign any letter asking questions.
I would sign any letter asking questions, I don't know yet. I mean, I'm listening to you and I'm listening to Tim, and I hear two different things, but I
Actually, I have
know I
off
don't
tomorrow. I
have enough
could go there.
information. What?
I have off tomorrow. If we agree on a letter, I could go.
About asking questions, to get information answered.
Yeah.
Or to at least share with them, these are our questions that we want to answer.
Can you get Ryan a letter?
I can try, I don't know.
Where do you have it, at home?
Or-
Do you have it at home?
No, I have to work in the office.
Oh.
It seems unlikely. I wonder if
And what, you know, I may have, not the actual letter, but the questions that were going to be asked in it.
That would be it.
that would be perfect.
Well,
At least
it's
on
fair to
that.
say the IDA gets a letter, right?
Oh, yeah, they have.
So if you go to the meeting and still don't get the letter, ask them for the letter.
Okay.
We have the same question.
We have the same
Well,
question.
basically, how would
Ditto.
it affect, how would it affect
Yes.
the library? I mean, it's,
Okay.
why would
Those
that
questions,
have
just
any
have it
library?
at the library.
Okay,
Put on a letterhead.
all right. Was that it, Barb?
Yep.
Okay. Tim, you had a couple of add-ons.
Yeah. The first thing is that a day or two ago, I received a letter from the Guilderland Police Department doing fundraising for, and I received it as the library director, not at home, doing fundraising for their annual National Night Out program, which is, I think, August 1st this year. And it's a sort of a community, it's almost a festival atmosphere in Tawacenta Park, where all of the governmental, law enforcement, fire agencies, and other agencies set up tables and kind of present information about themselves to the public. There's some interesting entertainment and so forth. We have gone for at least the last 2 years. Do you happen to know yet?
Just last year, I think, was our first time, I think, Sean.
We went the year before,
We went
remember?
the year before, yeah. But anyway, we go, and it's a wonderful event. Some years they have 5,000 or so people there, and it's getting expensive. It's a national program. Guilderland Police Department participates in it, and it's getting expensive for the Guilderland Police Department.
They funded?
They fund it, and they were asking us for a donation, and that's complicated legal ground. And I don't really know how complicated, but it's public money that we're allocating here. So I wondered if the board would be, one of the angles I'm taking is that when we go out to events, and Ann coordinates all of our outreach events,
but when we go out to events, there's at least one, I can't remember what it is, where there's a small fee associated, was it Ladies Night Out or the one?
Apple and wine or
The
something?
Apple and Wine, the ladies' night out, there's
Okay.
a small, a few of them have small fees.
Small fees, and you know, I said once to Ann privately, I hate to pay a fee just to go out, but it's what you have to do to be at a couple of these events. So there's almost a precedent in that we haven't made a donation to be at these other events, but we've paid a fee, and you know, I'm thinking that there's some goodwill to be bought in sending them $100, you know, out of our, I guess out of our programming budget would be the place to do it. You know, it's an event that works for us, and you know, I think we should be intertwined into our community in a supporting way, and not just in just a showing up way, but also in a way that puts just a little bit of, you know, meaning behind the fact that we're there. So, and you know, quite frankly, the other thing I thought of is that, you know, maybe if it's not right to use library funds, maybe we could commit to $100 from myself and the board members, you know, and divide that up by 12 and see if we can make a donation.
Can the foundation do it all?
You know, I hadn't thought about
I mean,
that,
because
but the
that's
foundation.
typically if there was a line.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certainly a budget on many foundations do it. I mean,
Yep.
that's, I don't know the rule, I don't know.
I think the foundation could do it.
I'm just curious.
And I'd be happy to ask them, but if they won't, she wants, Rosemary, and I think she's right, will not spend any money without a vote of her committee, so it would be a month.
No, but I mean, in the
So-
future, I mean, that
Yeah.
would be a good, a line item, you know, many foundations have a line item into
Sure.
certain special, you know, things, so, curious, but.
Would we be down as supporting the event?
I guess so.
I mean, we're listed as.
Oh, you mean would we be
sponsoring it.
put out, I don't know that they didn't say in their letter, which I have with me, but I don't think they said that they.
It's specifically for the event, to help pay for the event. I mean,
It's not the end. It's legal.
that's not a gift, they happen to sponsor the event. But if it's a gift to the police department, then it's a gift to the police department.
Well, what do we do at the event?
We have an informational table. We, now that we, and others have developed the capability of taking the pop-up library, so you bring computers and Wi-Fi, and you can actually sign people up for library cards, check out materials to them, and mainly do PR, you know, like you talk to people and, you know, teach them how to download things on their iPads, and so on and so forth. Just kind of do what we do here, but by reaching out to the public instead of waiting for them to come to us.
We issued a lot of cards last year.
Are they
It's no
asking-
different than what you do with
Are
the
they,
other
are they
events,
asking
really,
for a
right?
free cost?
Yeah.
Is that what they're asking for?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's a
really
program
no
expense.
different than
It's a
you do with the
program
other,
expense.
yeah.
It's a program expense, that's all.
Yep.
I
Okay.
mean,
You're
that's the way
paying
I
for a
look at it.
booth, you're paying
Yeah,
for a booth like
exactly.
you do with your.
That's why I
regular
asked
booth.
what we were doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It isn't, I wouldn't call it a donation. It's
No.
Okay.
It's a program
Frank, the
expense.
cost of
It's a
the-
cost of putting on a program.
Yeah, okay.
All right,
Can
well,
we stop charging for library cards then for people out of the district?
no, we still charge for people out of the district, but we do have fewer than we used to because we made the decision as a board to allow people who work in the district but don't live in the district to get library cards, and that was a lot of people. And then we also made the decision to cut the price of that card in half if you were a senior citizen or a veteran. And quite a few people who use the library are one or both of those categories. So we don't have a ton of revenue from that, but it is still like in the monthly report, we sold 3 of those last month, so.
Because if we're signing up people for library cards there, some of them will probably be out of the district.
Well, theoretically, but in that case, we'd probably have to bring them in here because we're not set up to accept money at those events. But, you know, I wouldn't look at it as something that we're gonna get $100 back the same way. That would be a quirk if that happened, so.
Okay.
And my other thing.
Joint meeting.
Yeah. So I doodle polled this board about dates for the joint meeting. I took, between this board and the library, school board, and I took the top 3 dates and presented them to the school board, I think last Thursday night. And the date that works for them is April 25th. I have forgotten what day of the week that is. And they would like to do it at 5 p.m. here at the library. And to revisit, this is, while we would love to have every one of you there, historically, it's 2 or 3 or 4 members of each board that get together. Doesn't necessarily have to be the full board or be a quorum. It's more of a information sharing session than it is, and looking for ways to collaborate. So they are proposing to have that here on April 25th at 5 p.m. And, if that doesn't work for us as a board, then we're going to be completely back to the drawing board in terms of having it. I think one of the key things to do this year is to make them aware of the Paul Mays design project. Because as I reported to you in an earlier meeting, Cliff Nooney thinks that our potential capital projects would line up very well with their potential capital projects over the next 4 or 5 years. And so if we could work together in the future, that would be a good thing. And they also, just as an aside, they want to have a meeting of their policy committee at 6 p.m. here in the library. And I don't imagine that there's any problem with the school district having a committee meeting here in the library, but I just wanted to float that. So it's clear that they want to have that meeting at 6, which means that they think of the annual joint meeting as going 1 hour, 5 to 6 p.m.
So the doodle
five.
thing came
Oh, I
out
thought
that.
it
The timing is actually very good, because it's a way to talk about the Cross Gates Hotel issue.
There you go.
And also, there was something else I was thinking of that we had in common to strategize about, which I can't recall, but the timing is very good.
So it's 5 o'clock, right? I put
5 o'clock on the 25th.
Like Dan said, that's at the Beautiful Sports.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, very good.
What day of the week is that?
It's a
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Okay, and then one other item. Phil Berardi, the head of the CERC department, which we now call Access Services, has identified that we have about 15 or 20 library patrons who owe us more than $200. And we have 3 who owe us, 2 who owe us about $1,200 or $1,400 each, and 1 who owes us $500. And well, I honestly am not very good at answering that question, but my understanding is that they've lost a lot of material, or claim to have lost a lot of material. And some individual books can be $100 books and so forth. So, but anyway, so he has sent a letter to the 3 worst offenders, requesting payment or having the items back, which is really our goal, is to get the items back. And that led to a discussion yesterday in the department heads meeting about whether we should ask our lawyer to draft a letter to that effect that we would send to all the other people that have high balances on us. Some libraries use a collection agency. Our real goal, we agreed as a department head group, is just to get the stuff back. Fines and fees are not really a reliable source of income for libraries. They're just meant to spur things coming back. And I think there was a feeling among the department heads that if we asked the lawyer to at least look at what we were sending out and or draft something, that it might be reacted to more strongly than a letter from the library. A letter from a law firm might pique someone's interest. So I was just asked if you folks had any opinion on whether we should be doing that.
Have the borrowing privileges been
Yes.
suspended?
Yeah, the
Yes.
privileges have been suspended.
Are these years now? Is this a
Yeah,
combination of years?
these are
now?
old accounts, basically. People are probably still around, but
Yeah.
they're not checking things out because we're not letting them, so that was the question, should I talk to Chris Blanchett?
If we know that their borrowing privileges are suspended, do the other UHLS libraries do that too?
Yes, they
Yes.
communicate that kind of stuff to each other.
So what are we looking for? Books?
Yeah, what do we?
Was
They
it
they might
Yeah.
be, CDs or DVDs as well, but, yeah.
But
We
that's
want
the
the stuff back.
point of the letter.
Yeah.
If they're already suspended.
Yeah,
It's very unlikely you're gonna get that back, I mean,
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
right, especially without, a lawyer.
Could we encourage them, just thinking off the top of my head, like, so if I was to lose the Captain America DVD, it would cost, whatever, $30, but you can get it much cheaper. Can you actually encourage them to go out and buy the lost items at a, at a cheaper cost than what I would imagine the library's putting it at.
It's a nice idea, and we do let people do that sometimes, but typically they buy one that's in poor condition, or, you know, it ends up
Yeah.
taking more time and money to referee that process.
But those are fines, that the actual item didn't cost $1,200 now, right?
They have more than one item. that
Oh,
they've
but
lost or-
but those are fines, that's not the item.
It's the replacement cost.
We
of the
bill
item.
them for lost items, once it has come
Right.
to a
Oh,
point.
thank you, Bonnie.
Wait,
Right.
can you say it again, please?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Once once the item reaches a certain limit,
right.
it becomes a billed item. We bill them the replacement charge. So
Right.
at this point, if you've got 10 items out
Oh,
at
at $100.
$20 a
That's
piece, you've
it.
got $200
Right.
bill there.
What's the dollar threshold for suspension?
Isn't it
Anything-
200 or 100?
Suspension, actually, we stop you at $5 to make you pay before we let you check out.
And they still went up to
So then what
700?
so how did that, how did it get so high?
Maybe they checked all
They
the stuff
took
out at
out
once.
that many items, I mean, the threshold is 75 items.
All at once, they could have taken out all, and then
Yeah.
just never returned them.
They most likely took them all, but not necessarily if you take it out on a weekly basis.
And these are after like attempts of letters and
Oh,
phone
yeah.
calls and all that
Yeah.
stuff. I
I
assume,
say,
yeah.
I don't get anything from it.
No.
Do you feel that this is something that will prevent people, as a deterrent? You know, if we try to get the funds back, or even like have them, you know, or what's your input on this?
Well, I do think that, you know, when you get a letter from a lawyer, you might pay attention to it, and it might deter you from doing this in another library, or from doing it in our library again if you were reinstated. But I also agree with Phil and others in the department head group that, you know, there's a certain personality type to people who work in libraries, and we're just really offended that somebody has taken this material that public funds have been used to buy for the good of many, and just either lost it or damaged it or kept it for themselves. So for us, it's kind of a principle.
So you're not saying waive the fee or anything?
No,
Okay.
no. We're saying either,
Get this stuff.
And if they do return the item, it goes down to $5. So then you have paying a $5 fine for each item, rather than the replacement cost for each item that is not returned.
Some of these people are Alzheimer's patients or something?
it's possible there could be some extenuating circumstances, you know, in their personal lives.
So what's your inclination?
I think we should pursue, you know, I would say everyone who owes us more than either $100 or $200, and, you know, try to get those items back.
And you want the letter, you want a short letter, or you want it to come from me?
I've asked Phil to send me the letter he's already sent to the worst of these people, and I thought that I would run that by Chris Lanchanton and get her input. I wanted to start with you guys, you know. Chris is, as I understand it, a labor lawyer. You know, this may not be her area of expertise. I haven't asked other directors what they do, except that I know that some, you know, Colony, for example, uses a collection agency. You
You're
know,
not going after kids or anything, right? These aren't like, you know, what's the age group?
it's a good question. I don't know. That's a good question.
Most of them are adults.
Small claims court or anything like that?
There might be some kind of a statute.
Well, the police are cheaper than the lawyer.
Right.
People arrested in various places.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, I think that hopefully.
And that's what the letter says, you know, if you return the items, it'll be $5.
I haven't read the letter, but
I mean, that would be, that's what really, usually it's an embarrassment or whatever, and, you know.
Like, you know, destroying people or their credit, or just like, you know, going after them.
What, no, right? You don't do that.
No.
I'm gonna guess that you're not gonna get anything more from a letter that's written by a lawyer than you are from
Okay.
the library.
My
You
guess
know,
is the same.
and
So it's
I-
kind of more, it's money.
I would rather that we not become a collection
Right,
agency with that mentality, and
right.
just somehow, I mean, there sounds like there's no way to prevent
Yeah.
this from happening
There is
again.
a-
We have all the checks in place, but it's the cost of us doing the business we do, I guess.
Yep.
And when you think of how many people are responsible compared with how many aren't, it's
And
pretty
once
good,
they
right?
get their fines up that high, they've already decided they'll never come back to the
Right,
library.
right, right.
We have 73 people who owe us between $100 and $200. So that totals about 10,000 there.
It's not listed under accounts receivable though.
No. We have 15 people who owe us between $200 and $300. We have 3 people who owe us between 3 and 4, 1 between 4 and 5, and 3 at above 500.
Publish your names.
Having an amnesty week or month, does that help at all with getting things back?
I mean, you,
Or the smaller ones it does.
Smaller, yes, but for something
Yes.
this
So
large,
then nothing,
no.
the ones
But it
that
sounds
are
like
under
nothing's gonna help
$100, they're gonna come back.
Take advantage of it.
So it
Right.
sounds like nothing is gonna help this situation.
I don't know, it seems like it, I don't know.
What do you think might help?
What do you think? What might help?
You know, I can't say there is a path to follow that will definitely get these materials back.
Is there a path to follow that might?
I mean, has there been an amnesty week for this bigger group? Like-
there have been general amnesty weeks that have
Does
been
anybody have an
publicized.
opinion
so-
about what could help?
I don't think you're gonna get the
Well, I think this
materials
is
back.
definitely within Tim's
I said, once they get something that high, they've already resolved.
I understand why you brought it up, you know,
Yeah.
I tend to think you're risk to getting a lawyer,
Yeah.
but,
Do you think you want, you still have, you wanna have something more?
No.
Okay, I have one more
Let's get
question.
that high, they've already tested the system, so.
This library had them arrested. They were cuffed up and.
Where's that?
Are they kids? They look like kids?
Colorado State Police. Ran them off there.
I hope that's not all.
Here's my other question, and it's,
They want 700 people in the library.
okay. Here's my other question, ever so slightly related, but the library plans to do a pretty informal celebration on June 6th, which is our actual anniversary of our charter date, where we're just going to,
Not the charter date.
what is,
Move-in
the
date.
opening date. of the
Move-in
building,
date.
Right, yeah. Thank you.
Location.
Thank you. And celebrating then the 25th anniversary of the building, and we're gonna get a cake and, you know, just basically serve people coffee and cake. And the department heads yesterday came up with the idea of doing a fine amnesty that week.
Good
and-
for that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So,
That's great.
but since it's revenue that is potentially lost, we felt that we had to ask you guys. But
That's a good.
we're happy to do it. We've actually done a couple of them. To be frank, I'm not sure we asked you about it.
Is this an all-day event, all-day long, that you'll have the cake?
We haven't decided
Oh,
that
okay.
yet, but it's probably gonna be at lunchtime, you know, and it'll be here until it's gone, so. You know. And that's all I have for new
Flag Day.
business.
That's also Flag Day.
Is that Flag Day?
It's the 14th, you said?
It's also D-Day.
No, June 6th.
Six.
14th is
D-Day.
Hudson River.
Six.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that exhausts new business.
Can I just say one thing on
Sure.
Crossgates? They do bring in a lot of sales tax, which does benefit us.
Mhm.
And because all of the hotel is going to be in Gilderland, so it's all gonna come to us.
Yeah, I've been hearing this a lot over the last
We don't
year.
get any sales
We just
tax
wanna make
money.
sure we get our
Yeah.
fair
A
share.
lot of the sales
Yeah.
tax goes to the
Yeah.
county.
Yeah, and the county doesn't give us anything.
No,
By us, you mean the town or the library?
Well,
yeah,
does
the
the town
county
give us
is
any
hard
money
to
either?
get it from.
So the county or the town doesn't give us any sales tax money, and, I mean, the state, what does the state give us, like $5,000?
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Which probably is, you know, nothing.
the one place where I think the hotel will,
Oh, okay, maybe it's just,
the one place where I think the hotel will really help is that, the growth, the levy growth factor each year is based on brick and mortar construction within your school district. And this is a big project, you know, and we've had a very positive number for the last 2 years.
It's based on new taxpayers.
New taxpayers, yeah, so.
If they are paying 50% more, if they're paying 50% of the 100% of the taxes,
Mhm.
then I suppose it would still increase the number.
I think it would. I don't know that I know it, but I think that it would.
Someone's paying on the land already, so
Yeah.
there's some.
Yeah, actually, I looked up the land.
Mhm.
They're right, though, they're not paying almost anything on this land now anyway, so,
So there are new taxes that we
Yeah.
generate.
I mean, they can't be paying more than $10,000 a year, I would guess, on this property right now.
There are several assisted living places in the offing.
Right.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, minutes of the last meeting.
We have to make a quick addition to them, because in the minutes, we don't, under the new hires, we did indicate that they're being paid at a rate of $13 an hour, which we usually say when someone new is hired at the end of the minute, you know. So we just have to add,
Can I add a few things?
yes, but.
By the way,
wait one
these
sec.
minutes, Judy and Jen are excellent, really
Jenna?
excellent.
Jenna,
Uh, Just a couple of additions though. Page 2. On the motion to approve closing the library event,
yes,
before you get to in favor, it should say, motion by C. Aldridge, second by Brian B. Best.
oh, okay.
Because that was the first and second.
Oh, yes, okay,
Okay.
so you're right, that's a motion.
But you have to vote correct.
Yeah,
Okay?
yes, that was motion by, correct, thank you for noticing that.
And on page 3, if you go to line 117,
Mm-hmm,
it gives two motions,
okay,
but no action at all. No motion, no, a second, no task that I can see.
oh, right, okay, that's right,
That's more
okay,
important.
yep, yep.
So on those,
I
check my
think I
notes.
have-
Do you have it all?
I don't know, I found. That was the Roland Butler,
Yeah, that was a Portland one too. They were both unanimous, but I don't have in my notes the,
who,
the motion and the second, sorry.
I may, I think between Jen and I will figure that out.
Okay,
I remember
all right.
making those motions, and
I
I think
think
I remember Barbara seconding them.
I think that that's correct.
It is that?
Actually, no, actually, sorry, you seconded it, Peter moved,
There we go.
okay? And,
My memory was faulty.
okay, so this is, Peter and Chris. And this, the other one with about the approval of the resignations
Correct.
was Chris and Barbara. No, yeah, Chris first and then Barbara. I really do have this written down.
Those are the only additions I have.
Okay, and then the addition of the $13 an hour,
But super job.
okay?
We'll get the amended ones at the top meeting.
I make the motion to approve the minutes
As amended.
Right.
Thank
A
you.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That was unanimous also.
yeah.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn to executive
I
session?
have a old business.
Oh, I thought that
I'm
was-
sorry,
is that
who,
now?
we missed it, who approved Chris
A
and,
second.
and Chris and,
Right.
okay, okay.
I didn't know we had it in front of us.
I'd like to make that same vote again on the foundation,
Okay, did we just, what did we just do right now?
that we close.
No, nobody,
Are we
nobody
going- are
made
we
that
going
motion.
No,
No.
nobody made that motion. I made a mistake.
Okay.
There's no business, and I didn't know
Okay.
that.
And I
First of all, point of order, I think the proper motion under Robert's rules, and I think this is what you want to do, is a motion for reconsideration of something that has already been resolved. That would be a majority vote, up or down. If it's up, then you could make a motion, I presume, to do what I think you're gonna do.
Because we said that we were putting it off to this meeting, I believe.
No, we
Okay.
actually, if you look at the minutes we just approved, we didn't do that.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's what it said after
Yeah.
that.
But you can make a motion to
Yeah.
reconsider.
I'd like to make a
Was he on
motion to
the
reconsider.
presiding side?
Pardon me?
Was he on the winning side in that vote?
No.
Then he can't make it.
You know, as long as it was debatable, I think under Robert's rules, he can make, anyone can make a motion.
To reconsider, I think you have to be on the presiding.
Do it your way. I'll
Yeah,
make
if you want to
it
do it, if you want to do
reconsider,
it that way.
And whoever else voted yes, like, you, I think you did too, right?
No, they weren't here. Weren't here, so it was
Jason maybe?
Jason.
Our motion to reconsider?
The vote for the closing on.
She motioned,
Oh.
you got
You
the second.
voted against it.
Okay,
Oh, well,
Alright.
we haven't had enough coffee.
wait a minute, this is new business, we're still in new business.
No, this is old
No,
business.
this is
Old
still
business.
no.
Right, we're in old
Well, I
business.
can second, I mean, I just get made the motion.
All right.
I voted against it,
So-
and I agree with
We're,
her,
Okay.
motion to reconsider, is that what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay,
You're
no,
fine.
no, we can all, Chris and Brian
Brian
and I.
and Jason.
and it's funny, I know a lot of about this, so, and so that's why I concur with her. Yeah, I
We have
think a lot
to,
of
we have to
studying with
defer to
Robert's
you
rules.
on that.
Motion to reconsider,
Who's it by?
It's the 76,
by Barbara.
976.
Okay, so Barb
Okay.
made the motion,
Closing
Jason
library.
seconded it. And everyone knows what we're voting on,
Okay,
reconsider what
Barbara?
we did last time.
I do not, I can be clear in saying I have no
Okay.
idea what we're talking about.
You just look at the
No,
notes.
it's close.
So it's
No,
six.
it's six. Remember how we all voted
Oh,
against
okay,
it?
thank you.
We're reconsidering this motion about closing the
Yeah,
library.
Close for
Oh,
the foundation event.
jeez, God,
Okay,
okay.
all in favor?
Of
Of
closing
what?
the library?
This is
No, no,
the-
we're
this-
reconsidering the motion.
Alright.
All in favor of reconsidering that?
This is,
Oh, I'm in favor of reconsidering it.
Okay.
Anyone opposed to that?
No.
Okay, that's
Okay,
unanimous.
and Barbara made the motion, Jason seconded it.
And I didn't ask if anyone abstained. Did anyone
Okay.
abstain? Okay.
Okay, all right, so
That's
that's,
unanimous.
that, okay.
Are we discussing that?
We're
No.
ready.
You can make a motion and then discuss.
Okay, I make a motion to close the library early on
Okay.
10/9/2017 for a cocktail event
I second.
hosted by the foundation.
Talking today, Saturday, not Saturday, Thursday night from 5 to whatever, even in September, October, they don't have.
Right, you don't need a specific date.
I thought that's the date that we agreed on that night, but whatever date.
No, I think it's, yeah, right.
All right, we better make this clear. The
Thursday.
motion- Could you go through it slowly?
Sure.
Slowly,
For
please.
Judy's
To
sake.
approve the closing of the library early on a Thursday night in September or October chosen by the foundation for a cocktail event hosted by the foundation to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the building of this library building and the 60th anniversary of the library itself.
Closing at 5 o'clock.
No earlier than, I think.
No, 5 o'clock.
They were gonna do it 5.
5 o'clock.
Because of the way the.
Can I make one
I second.
suggestion to the motion, is that it's in conjunction with the board?
Yeah.
That their, whatever date they choose is in conjunction with the board.
At a mutually agreed upon
On
date.
date, yeah. I second.
Okay, let's wait till Judy's got it down before we vote.
Yeah.
We got
Discuss
it.
it.
We'll get
Like
it.
what they said.
On date. Okay, so, motion to close library no earlier than 5 PM on a mutually agreed upon date in October or September. Do we have to say a Thursday evening?
Thursday evening.
Thursday evening.
Mutually agreed upon Thursday evening in October or September. How did you talk about how, for the foundation to host an event to commemorate?
For the purposes of
For-
celebrating the.
25th anniversary of the building, 60th anniversary of the library.
Who seconded that again? I did. Oh, I did.
Barbara, okay. Okay, is there, Judy, tell me when you're ready.
So you want- Does anybody want any discussion on it?
Yeah, no, that's right, there's gonna be discussion, but do you have the motion?
I do.
Okay, is there any discussion on
I
the
have the
motion?
motion, I have the motion.
Anybody wanna discuss that?
Will candidates be open to the public?
Can they be both?
no, so the question was, before it was asked,
Okay, I'm gonna.
would it be
write
open
this
to the
up.
public to be able to come to the event, right? That's what you're
Yeah.
asking on?
You pay
Yes, if they
$50,
pay the
yeah.
$50.
Yeah, you can register online.
Anybody can come if they buy a ticket, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but some people can't.
Any other discussion?
I mean, you could cordon off sections if you really wanted to and keep part of the library.
No.
And listen, I'm
But
just,
then it's not
well,
closed.
hold
Hey,
on,
she's
folks.
making a
It's
suggestion.
just a suggestion, this is how you work in a, right, in an environment. If you were so concerned about it, this would be a part and this would be a part. It's done all the time, if you were worried about it. Just a suggestion. So,
No, I think it's a good idea.
I think it's a good idea, they should try it. You never know until you try.
It's only one night. As long as it's advertised.
yeah.
People are certainly gonna complain. I mean, I think, even when you have,
Do
Easter
closures
Sundays,
any other
people are
time,
gonna
yeah.
complain, but, I think it's worth the risk.
Do your work.
I can probably close on a holiday.
Right, right.
Can we
Is
vote?
everybody okay on this 27th? I mean, because we do have to, I'd like to be able to tell them that.
Well, we're gonna give them either, it's gonna be in September or October.
No, I know, but I mean, is there anything, particular of issue on the September 27th? Because they'd like, they've spent some time on that, that's my point. September 27th is what they
Hold on,
proposed.
one thing, Karen, hold on. I think
Today
it's
it's October 19th as well.
I was
That was,
given-
that was last time.
I was
I
given
know,
both
but
of those
tonight,
dates.
Yeah,
right,
we-
but tonight they proposed
did have a date.
September 27th, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
They had picked September 27th or October 19th to give the board some flexibility.
Right,
So,
but tonight, they just, their suggestion was, and then that's just a timing, if we didn't like it, something about it, we should tell them, you know, that's all I'm saying, is there any issue that we have? I mean, obviously sooner than later, I think.
It's not very much, but they
What?
verbally they said that, right?
Oh, I thought it was on their thing.
No, it's not. I didn't hear it, I didn't hear it or see it.
Okay, so it's a Thursday in September, October,
I'm sorry. I thought
second
you did.
bullet.
No, it's all right. Maybe it's in my head. So let me ask you again, is there a preference then that anybody has on the dates, so I can be clear with them?
Well, can we deal with that, see if the motion passes first?
Sure.
Okay. Is there any other question? That's part of the motion, as the mutual.
The 28th.
All right, if there's no further discussion,
Sorry.
I'll take the vote. All in favor?
Twenty-eighth.
Is anyone opposed?
Opposed. Abstain.
Okay, and is your post, okay, and are there any abstentions?
Jason,
Jason?
that I agree, thank you.
Okay, so
Jason.
everyone's vote has to be recorded.
Yes, and who opposed, Carol?
Carol and Peter.
Anyone else? Carol and Peter?
Right. Jason's abstaining.
I got Jason, okay. Everyone else in
Okay.
favor?
Do you need anything else on that? All right, that passed. Do we have a motion to go into executive session? Peter?
Second.
Okay, hold
All
on,
in favor?
hold on, Peter Bryan.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, that passed unanimously. Thank you.
okay, hold on.